Прийшли окупанти до
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1262 of the War News stream. But today we got very big news that U.S. officials have invited war criminal Vladimir Putin to meet in Alaska with U.S. officials. Also, the Russian oil refineries are exploding yet again today after Ukrainian drone attacks, and Lithuania has formally requested NATO air defenses as a result of recent Russian incursions. It's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world as we have been able to hear of major developments throughout the entirety of the day. We have been able to hear that the ICC arrest warrant war criminal Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation is being invited to the United States of America today inside of the state of Alaska here coming up next Friday. We are also understanding that at the exact same time, the tariffs and sanctions that were long to be touted by the President of the United States on a 90-day deadline or a 60-day deadline, then cut down to 10, were supposed to coalesce today and appear to have completely disappeared. We have now been able to hear that it has joined the graveyard along with the list. Apparently, sanctions and lists do not exist from this point forward. Nevertheless, we were also able to hear that in the meantime, while the United States of America is now considering attempting to conclude a peace in Ukraine without the Ukrainians even being involved inside the peace negotiation, we are also hearing that in the meantime, no one in Eastern Europe appears to be tricked by the Russian Federation, as Lithuania, a NATO member, has officially, through the NATO channels, requested for official armed air support to be able to help protect their skies against further Russian drone incursions and the continuing deteriorating situation inside of Eastern Europe. We have also been able to hear simultaneously that the Federal Republic of Germany has been stating that hundreds of drone incidents have been reported throughout their nation over the past several months, and it does largely appear to be the case that the Russian Federation may be behind a large amount of these drone efforts inside the country, largely trying to conduct surveillance and gather some intelligence. But once again, the Russians generally are always looking for intelligence, as it seems to be sorely missed, much like intelligence is sorely missed in our foreign policy easy decision-making. Nevertheless, we were also able to hear that the Ukrainians were able to strike and destroy Russian Federation armed forces and critical infrastructure throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation's southern regions overnight, including an attack on Milarovo and an attack on a natural gas refinery location inside of Sloviansk na Kubani, the second hit in a row. We have also been able to hear that it appears that the Russian Federation is attempting to sabotage their fuel supplies being provided to the Europeans in modest numbers these days, as the Romanians are now stating that the fuel supplies being imported through the pipeline appear to be tainted, once again showing that the Russian Federation is starting to conduct some form of hybrid warfare. But we know that the Russian Federation is a respectful nation, and their leader has one of the highest approval ratings in the world, truly one of the grandest. Nevertheless, we have also been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have held their front today and have made it clear that under any circumstances, according to official statements today, they will not be accepting or allowing for the cessation of territories or the cessation of the war without those territories being returned back into Ukrainian control. We have also been able to hear in the meantime, inside of the Republic of India, that the Republic of India has made it incredibly clear that they will no longer be looking for a future inside the Western world, as they have now halted all U.S. arms shipments as of today, and are now openly touting the Russian Federation to be a close friend and ally of the Republic of India, largely showing that the Indian-American relations have pretty much been sunk as of today. We have also been able to hear of significant developments inside of East Asia, as 47 People's Liberation Army Air Force aircraft were spotted inside the Strait of Taiwan, and the People's Republic of China is directly threatening the Philippines. It does appear that at the moment, the Philippines, generally considered a U.S. ally, is being threatened once again by the People's Republic of China as they attempt to exert a great deal of naval influence inside the South China Sea, and that is incredibly unfortunate, as it appears they will most likely be left entirely on their own. Nevertheless, the United States of America has also moved their armed forces closer to the North Korean border in the meantime, although that decision will most likely be reversed within the next 2 weeks, give or take. We have also been able to hear in the meantime that the Israelis have conducted an airstrike within southern Lebanon, killing another top leader of a Iranian-backed terrorist faction within southern Lebanon, and that they've also started to make their intentions clear for what the future of the occupied Gaza Strip will start to look like. There is a major, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, folks, one other little thing. While the Russians are saying that they're looking for peace, they are now going to be testing a nuclear reactor-powered missile inside the Russian Federation to further build up their nuclear strike capabilities against the United States of America and the greater Western world. Clearly, a country pursuing peace. But nevertheless, we are going to be covering all of the major news that we have over the past 24 hours, and it has been absolutely significant. Major news, as a matter of fact. And of course, it looks like things are always looking up and up for the Russian world, more so than the West. But we will be getting into all of that news, at least here over the past 24 hours. Moving on into our first and major pieces of news for the night, we have been able to hear that while the United States and Russia are trying to float some sort of a Munich Agreement 2.0, we are hearing that many Eastern European countries are continuing to see that the situation is deteriorating and the security situation is as bad as it could be throughout the entirety of the war in Ukraine. And we have been able to hear that an official formal request of assistance has been issued by the Lithuanian government to help bolster its air defense following 2 major Russian drone incursions, including one Russian drone that flew directly over the capital of Vilnius inside of the country, flying directly over the capital city and landing just several miles outside of the northeastern outskirts. It does appear incredibly clearly at this point that the nation of Lithuania considers its national security to be under great jeopardy, or at least a great deal of threat at the moment. We do understand that this is following along with multiple other NATO countries within the eastern frontier, such as the remainder of the Baltic states, Finland and Poland, continuing to arm and prepare for a future where the Russian Federation may be heading to war, as it becomes incredibly clear that Russia's territorial ambitions will eventually be realized within Eastern Europe and the remainder of Poland. But it does appear that at the moment the Lithuanians have now issued an official request, and we are waiting to see what NATO countries will join in on fulfilling that official request to help them bolster their air defense to be able to deflect or largely stop the significant damage that could be caused by a Russian and drone and missile attack sometime in the near future. In the meantime, the Federal Republic of Germany has also made it incredibly clear that there has been a high number of drone incidents that have occurred throughout their country. According to a Bild report, over 500 drone incidents have occurred inside of Germany within the past 3 months alone, mainly targeting military bases and critical energy infrastructure. Many drones did fly undetected by radar, suggesting the use of advanced or homemade models. Despite 123 criminal probes, perpetrators remain mostly unidentified, raising serious security concerns. It generally does appear that at the moment there is some some sort of a foreign actor inside the Federal Republic of Germany, of whose origins we would just be completely amiss to know, that are trying to conduct surveillance and largely intelligence gathering operations through drone forces to be able to try and see exactly what armed forces and what military capabilities lie throughout the entirety of the Federal Republic of Germany. One thing that is incredibly interesting to note is that a large amount of these drone occurrences and sightings are, oddly enough, happening within specific states within the Federal Republic of Germany where there is a large military presence, either by the Federal Republic of Germany itself or by its Western allies, such as the United States of America, as the Ramstein Air Base actually falls within the Rheinland-Pfalz Federal Republic state, near to the area of Saarland. This is becoming increasingly clear at the moment that the Russian Federation is most likely the state actor behind these operations within the Federal Republic of Germany, and that they are attempting to gain more on-site information about military capabilities of the Western powers or NATO as a whole, and to also be able to prepare and wargame their eventual strike plans if they are to be conducted. Nevertheless, at the same time, there has been a major development today, and as many of you all know, today is the day. It is D-Day, for all things considered. Y'all know, y'all remember, right? That major deadline that was put out by the President of the United States for the Russian Federation to either seek a peace in Ukraine or crippling sanctions were to be implemented. This was a make or break situation as far as we were concerned on the channel, and as far as many people were concerned around the world. We were either going to show the Russians that we were serious about making peace, or we were going to show that we were spineless, limp, and largely ineffective in our abilities to secure the interest of the Western sphere, and also put a strong foot forward against the national enemies of the United States of America, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the People's Republic of China, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It appears that that day has come, and many of y'all are wondering what has happened as far as the sanctions or the threat of sanctions against the Russian Federation. It appears that many great things have happened, as the President of the United States, in his all-knowing and benevolent judgment, as wise and great a leader as he is, has decided that there will be no sanctions, and instead we will actually be inviting Vladimir Putin to the very soil of the United States of America, meeting him in Alaska on the 15th of August of 2025. The territory that the Russian Federation claims is still theirs. He will be meeting the President of the Russian Federation in. It does appear that this is something that has taken some by shock and others not so much. Me personally, I would actually have to be one of the people who is not taken at all by surprise of this, because this generally does seem to be the running trend at this point, at least as far as foreign policy is concerned, is that we make grand claims and then we fulfill none of them. We also have been able to hear in additional wording as well that it appears that there has been a fairly interesting sort of a statement also made additionally by the President of the United States today, as the President has stated that he's confident that there's a possibility of signing a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine in the coming months, and according to a direct quote, Zelensky is going to get ready to sign something. It sounds like we have a concept of a treaty. But beyond that, we also have been able to hear even greater news. We have been able to hear that because the President of the United States is the greatest leader and is the greatest negotiator ever in the world, the Ukrainians will not be involved in the peace negotiations whatsoever that will be taking place in Alaska. The United States will sell away Ukrainian land, territory, and largely strategic ambitions of the NATO alliance in Eastern Europe wholesale without consulting the Europeans or the Ukrainians. We will only be consulting the Russians, and then we will force this treaty onto the Ukrainians, and they will either sign it or they will most likely completely lose all American military support into the future. It appears to be one of the greatest master plans that we have ever heard so far. It does already appear that this is meeting some resistance, however, because we all know that a great plan can only be met by resistance inside of the state of Ukraine, as we have been able to hear that there has been a great deal of comments by Zelensky and also by others inside of the Ukrainian state that are making it quite clear that they will not be accepting the cessation of territory. Ukraine is open to a ceasefire, but according to all statements today, they will not be recognizing territorial losses at any point inside of the ceasefire. The Telegraph reports that the Ukrainians are ready to discuss a ceasefire along the current front line, but firmly reject any international recognition of Russia's affirmed control over occupied territories. According to the report, Ukraine's constitution prohibits the president or parliament from unilaterally changing the country's borders. Zelensky does acknowledge that fully liberating all occupied territories by force is no longer feasible and that diplomatic options must be explored, and the use of territorial recognition already derailed a potential peace deal in the spring when the U.S. reportedly considered recognizing Crimea as a de facto Russian state. But Kyiv is strongly opposed to the move. It does appear that at the moment, it has also been made clear once again by another statement from Zelensky that Russia has set out its ceasefire demands, and the U.S. is now seeking approval from Ukraine and Europe. Zelensky has said that Ukraine is receiving strong support under the new conditions with a set deadline for Russia. Attempting to sound optimistic, while at the same time the situation is somewhat optimistic and not really in reality. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about the eventual fact that the Ukrainians may or may not be forced to try and surrender their land permanently to the Russian Federation on the current basis right now. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So as the enforcer mentioned, today was the deadline for secondary sanctions to be put on Russia if they did not agree to a ceasefire immediately inside of Ukraine. Basically as it stands right now, we have basically violated the United States' end of that. We have not put secondary sanctions on Ukraine, and right now Russia is walking scot-free. And not only are we not putting secondary sanctions on Russia, we're also rewarding Putin by telling him, let's talk inside of the United States soil now. As a war criminal, we're going to invite him to Alaska. We're going to bring him out. We're going to have a nice talk about giving up land that doesn't even belong to the United States. So that's currently the plan as it stands right now. So what are your thoughts about Putin demanding Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea in exchange for a ceasefire? What are your thoughts? 70% said that's bad. Ukraine cannot surrender land, while 15% said good, let's stop the killing, and 10% said it depends on the details. And the one argument that I've heard all day long from everybody is let's stop the killing. And I don't think anybody on this planet is in favor of the killing to continue. Nobody wants that to continue. Everybody wants it to stop. Everybody hates war. I think that's pretty much something we all agree upon. But the one thing we don't agree upon, though, is capitulating to appeasement because it's been done so many times in the past. It's never worked. Appeasement has historically been proven to actually cause wars and not prevent them, and it's been proven over centuries of historical data. So we're about to do the exact same thing again here. It sounds like the U.S. wants to bring Putin over in the midst of violating our own agreement that we had come to put secondary sanctions on Russia. We want to bring him over and discuss giving him lands that he is trying to steal. So just crazy times, honestly, insane. And I'm with the 70%. It's very bad, and Ukraine cannot surrender the land. I suspect that they probably won't agree to it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the Ukrainians cannot surrender land and that they should not agree to any attempt to force a ceasefire on them. That includes the cessation of Ukrainian territories within Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, or Kherson primarily. It appears that the United States has already abandoned, most likely along with Ukraine, the attempt to retake Crimea, which I generally would consider to be a great loss strategically to the NATO alliance, as well as the United States of America in particular, and the state of Ukraine, but it appears that that has pretty much already been abandoned at this point by all parties. We would have to say, however, beyond that, that the Ukrainian armed forces or the Ukrainian state accepting the surrender of further land and recognizing the territorial claims by the Russian Federation inside of the country would be absolutely for naught. It would not achieve anything, especially considering that this is just to get into a ceasefire. This is not to get into a peace treaty. This is to get into a ceasefire on the current conflict. And there is a very big difference between the two. A ceasefire means that there has been an agreed cessation to the conflict, and the conflict can begin largely at any point beyond that time. Even if someone claims that it is a 30-day ceasefire, they can break that ceasefire within about a couple of hours, or a matter of days, or a matter of weeks. This means that the Ukrainian state has to pretty much give up the major point of contention in the conflict at this point to even get to talking to the Russians about anything else. This is absolutely asinine, and it is stupid. There is no other way to get about that rather than this is the most brain-dead foreign policy approach that I've ever seen so far. I'd have to say that at this point, whoever is making this kind of a decision, which many of y'all know who it is, has to be drooling at the mouth when they're not in front of a camera, because there's no way that this makes any sense by any degree or any measure whatsoever. To reach a ceasefire, to actually talk about a peace treaty, we are going to concede all of the major points that the Russian Federation would be looking for to achieve a peace treaty for just a ceasefire. So that begs the question, what would they even be asking to reach a actual peace treaty with the state of Ukraine? That is a major issue that nobody's even addressing at this point, and seems to be lost from the forest to the trees, I guess is the best way to put it, because there is absolutely nothing at this point that is making it clear that the Russian Federation wouldn't be asking for more beyond this. We are going to be forcing the Ukrainians to accept the cessation of the entirety of the Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk oblasts just for the Russians to stop shooting, possibly for a couple of weeks. That doesn't make any sense at all. And then we see the Russians stop shooting for a couple of weeks for them to most likely push forward even further demands against the state of Ukraine beyond the territories that the Ukrainians have already conceded. Then the Ukrainians will most likely not accept that because they've already pretty much given up all the territory that would have been achieved in a peace treaty. And then the war begins again. And we've made it absolutely nowhere. Now the Ukrainians are 2 steps back and the Russians are 1 step forward. That has no sense to it whatsoever. I would have to say that this is something that the Ukrainians should not accept under any circumstances because it is putting the Ukraine and the Western world and the United States at a severe strategic disadvantage and putting the ball inside of Russia's court to be able to operate further. Not only that, there are also greater issues to be considered beyond that as well, as we are also hearing that the European Union has been speaking to Ukraine in a separate meeting from the United States today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So right now, the very big question is this. If the United States starts waffling on this entire situation about Ukraine and Russia and the ceasefire talks, and the U.S. starts threatening Ukraine with withdrawing support yet again if they do not agree to this ceasefire, which gives up literally massive portions of Ukrainian land, what do you think the EU is going to do? Is the EU going to pressure Ukraine to give into it, or are they going to still support Ukraine so that way they don't just have to give up all their land and walk away after being basically invaded by Putin and also having their land stolen? So 72% said no, the EU will still help Ukraine and they'll save Ukraine from an eventual death without the U.S. support, while 15% said yes, the EU will tell Ukraine to agree and pressure them into it against their will, and 9% said it depends on the details. And this is basically the big crux of the issue. Basically, the EU is Ukraine's insurance policy. If the EU decides that they're going to pressure Ukraine into accepting a ceasefire, then in my opinion, Ukraine will probably have no choice but to accept it and give up their land. So Ukraine has to vie for the support of the EU pretty much all the way through, or otherwise they're going to be in some serious trouble. So I would say that unfortunately, hopefully history is not a guide here, but just to give you all some context, this has happened before in history. There was a British Prime Minister, his name was Neville Chamberlain, and back in 1938, he helped come up with an agreement called the Munich Agreement. It was involving Czechoslovakia, and what happened was this. Hitler started a war on Czechoslovakia earlier that year in 1938. Hitler demanded that the Czechs surrender part of their territory to Germany, called the Sudetenland, or he was going to start a major war in Europe and wreak havoc across the entire continent. So what happened was the EU met together, they excluded Czechoslovakia from the talks, like we're trying to do Ukraine right now, and they gave away Czech land to Hitler to appease him so that way he wouldn't start this larger war. And then literally 12 months later, Hitler started World War II by invading Poland. So it sounds like we're about to do the same thing over again. I hope that's not the case, but it's so ominously similar. It really begs the question. Is the EU going to make the same mistake again? And is the U.S. going to make the same mistake again? Because it seems like it might be the case. So it seems like we got a Mr. Chamberlain on our hands again. And yeah, you would think that people would learn from history, but apparently it's not really working that well. And also Mr. Chamberlain also wanted a Nobel Peace Prize really badly. He got nominated for it, and it got revoked right after Hitler invaded Poland because he was blamed for the appeasement that led to World War II. So Mr. Chamberlain's legacy kind of went down in smoke. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that hopefully the European Union will help Ukraine, but I also have a feeling, just to be entirely honest with y'all, not to be pessimistic, but the United States is most likely going to start threatening sanctions against the European Union again if they do not accept this or pressure the Ukrainians into the ceasefire, and that probably means that the European Union, knowing how weak-spined a lot of leaders are also in Europe, will most likely try and force the Ukrainians to take this decision, pretty much meaning that this will be a repeat of the Munich Conference of 1938, just in the modern day and age. This is an absolutely ridiculous sort of a thing to see, and I'll try and explain it the best I can, because Matthew actually explained the historical side of things incredibly well with the 1938 Munich Conference, and a lot of people who are always chanting the words of peace never realize what is actually going to be coming down the pipe as a result of cowardice. Cowardice and a wish for peace are two different things. When you're a coward, you're begging for people to come to war with you. Because here's what we've done today. Let me describe it to all of y'all really quickly. So we've told the Russians that we are so serious about peace, they better reach it by the 8th of August, or we are going to F with them. That's basically what we said. So we count down the days to the 8th of August. Today's the day the United States of America, the largest military and economic superpower on the planet, is going to start effing with the Russians. We made it incredibly clear that they could either reach a peace by today or they were going to get screwed over. They have not reached a peace by the 8th of August. And instead of us trying to screw them over, like we said we were going to, we are now going to completely forget that we said that, and we are now going to extend it another 2 weeks, almost quite literally, another 2 weeks, and then talk to the Russians a little bit more. And this time, we are definitely not including the Ukrainians in any negotiations, and we are most likely going to come to a unilateral agreement and go back to Ukraine and tell them, as a sovereign nation, you are going to have no say in this matter, and you're either going to accept these terms, or we are going to screw you over as an ally. That is something that is going to lead to a situation that isn't that great, because it's twofold. One, we just made it clear today that we are not following through on any ultimatums. So any ultimatums from this point, no one's going to believe them, because our words are meaningless from this point on. When you tell someone, do not cross into my yard yelling at me, or I'm going to knock you upside the head, and then someone crosses the fence on your yard and gets into your yard and starts shouting at you, and you go, oh, you know what? Come into my house, let's have some tea and talk about why you're angry. Well, they're going to do that again. They're not going to stop harassing you and messing with you. They're going to start pushing the envelope because you made it clear that you're spineless at that point. The second thing is that we are now incentivizing this. Now we show that if you step and stomp and tread and treat our deadlines and ultimatums like a joke, not only will we sit there and overlook it, we're actually going to sit there and reward you. Now we'll have talks in Alaska, because you completely pissed on the face of every single citizen of this republic and the nation at large. We will now actually invite you to our country and talk to you, now that you completely disrespected the United States from top to bottom. Now that we will reward you for that. So now, what is everyone going to do? Well, Iran's going to keep working on a nuclear weapon, because it's incredibly clear that the United States, at best, is going to take a weak-spined action and maybe bombing them once, and if they're able to keep working on a nuclear weapon beyond that, America is going to do nothing. And also on top of that, Taiwan might as well be out to the wolves at this point, because the Chinese know we could pretty much go to war with Taiwan, and at best, the U.S. would give us an ultimatum, we'd ignore it, and then they'd actually tell us, okay, how much of Taiwan do you want? Do you want the whole island? You can have it. And we'll actually cooperate with our enemies, the enemies of this republic, to allow them to enrich themselves and benefit off of our own detriment. This is an absolute position of weakness that has been exhibited today that is going to produce nothing beneficial in the future. And to all the people who want to sit there and say, oh, it's warmongering and peace should be achieved at every cost. Peace is a lofty goal to be achieved at any price. I can tell you this, that the people from World War II, the 500,000 Americans that died in that war, could tell you that peace was achieved at an extreme cost of their lives, because the cowards from years prior didn't make the tough decisions then that would have saved a lot of lives tomorrow. That is the truth of it. That is the real situation that you're dealing with right here. We are going to sit here, much like we saw the Nazi Germans, and the Nazi Germans are going to get appeased, like the Russians are getting appeased right now if this continues to push through the way it is. They're going to get appeased, and then they're going to set their sights further, because the Russian world, or the Ruski Mir as they call it, doesn't stop in Ukraine. It stops in the very heart of Poland itself, and the Baltics as well as Finland. So pretty much everything that's on the eastern side of NATO right now is going to be under threat and jeopardy of a future Russian invasion. We've made it incredibly clear right now that the Russians can threaten us with nuclear arms, through Medvedev's own words, that they can threaten us for years, that they can sit there and operate against our strategic imperatives and national security concerns, and we will actually applaud them in the effort. So who's to say that they wouldn't try an invasion of Finland or the Baltics or Poland and just see that the United States sits by and then forces a great deal of the additional member states of NATO to sit by and watch as these invasions unfold and pretty much let the Russians deal with each of these countries piecemeal at a time? There's nothing to say that that wouldn't happen. Who's to say that in the future, South Korea might be left entirely on their own against the North Koreans, or the Taiwanese against the Chinese, or the Philippines, which are being threatened by the Chinese today, will be left entirely to their own devices by the United States to defend against the Chinese threat? Who's to say that that won't happen?
I think the part that's confusing to me is, if y'all recall, Medvedev just made nuclear threats against the United States a few days back, and then he doubled down on it too after we sent the nuclear submarines to the Russian coast, publicly speaking. He doubled down again and made another missile threat toward the United States. And this is right preceding this events happening today. It literally just preceded that. So we just sent nuclear submarines over to Russia. We obviously spent money on that military deployment to take that situation very seriously. And if we really thought that that was a serious threat, threat, then why are we even entertaining talks with Russia if we properly took that as a nuclear threat? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. And also on top of that, we didn't even put any secondary sanctions on the Russians. And another thing that doesn't make any sense at all is we just put an extra 25% tariff on India yesterday to get them to stop buying the Russian oil for the sole purpose of crippling the Russian oil economy. And then today we had the opportunity to really finish off the oil economy in Russia by putting these secondary sanctions on them. And not only did we not do that, but then we said also, Vladimir Putin, you want to get Ukraine's land? We'll consider giving that to you, and we'll try to force Ukraine to give it to you. That's basically what came out today. So maybe there's another flip-flop in the next few days or so. I mean, it's certainly possible. I'm not ruling that out at this point because I was laying bets on that today there were going to be sanctions on Russia. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's naive. It's in hindsight now. So of course it looks naive, but all the signs had indicated that the U.S. had backed themselves into a corner. They had to do this. They had to put secondary sanctions on Russia, but somehow we decided to take this massive reputation hit today and not put the sanctions on Russia. The reputation hit today is going to be tremendous. Like, it's already pretty bad. It's baffling to really look at it because who's going to take us seriously from this point forward? Like, for example, if we tell Putin, you better not invade the Baltics, why would Putin take us seriously? I mean, we're backing out of everything. He's going to say, oh, they're bluffing like always. I'm just going to invade anyway, and they won't do anything. That's what he's going to think. It literally increases the chances of war actually happening by doing things like this and backing out of promises.
I would have to say it is doing nothing but a detriment to the image of this country and our standing strategically in the world. It is begging everyone at this point to do whatever they want to anyone that's an American-backed ally that props up our economy, that makes us money in this country, and makes them money mutually, and see how far they can push it. Because today we've proven that you can push the Americans to the absolute limit, and they are so spineless and weak they won't do anything in response. They'll just sit there and let you keep going on. What the hell would have happened, folks? What kind of a precedent would this have set if we had done this in any other era? If we did this in the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we said the Russians are not going to continue to put missiles in Cuba, and we hadn't depth charged a Soviet submarine. What if we sat there and just said, stop putting missiles in Cuba, and the Soviets said, F you, and then they just kept doing it, and we backed off? What would that say? That would have said America's weak, we're cowards. That's what it would have said. What would have it said if George H.W. Bush back in 1991 told the Iraqis, you have to leave Kuwait or we're going to go in and wipe you people out inside of Kuwait? If we hadn't followed through with that ultimatum, what would that have shown to the United States? It would have shown that we are cowards. When George Bush said that Saddam Hussein had 48 hours to leave Baghdad, otherwise the U.S. was invading the country because they were making weapons of mass destruction, and we hadn't followed through on that ultimatum, what would that have shown? That would have shown that America was a coward. And what are we seeing today? We said in 10 days' time, on the 8th of August, you can either find a peace inside of Ukraine, or we are going to be putting sanctions on the Russian Federation that will destroy the economy to its very core and force you to end the war either way. So you can choose the easy way out, or you can choose the hard way. And the Russians said, we'll pick the third option, which is we'll keep doing what we want, and we'll keep treating you people like fools. And we'll get away with it too. And they did. And that is an absolutely terrible precedent to lay out. This is the exact same thing that happened in 1938, and it's happening over again, and people are too blind to see it.
You know what this kind of reminds me of, because now I will say this: the meeting on August the 15th that's going to be held in Alaska between the U.S. president and Putin, it will be nonetheless historic, because of course Putin is at war right now with Ukraine. He's been at war basically with Europe in a hybrid sense for years now. So it's going to be historic to bring him to Alaska, even though I'm very much opposed to it. I don't think we should be bringing a war criminal to the United States, but he's coming here. It's already been agreed to, so it's going to happen. It's going to be essentially the same thing as when the current U.S. president met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea and crossed over the middle line between the two countries. It's going to be basically the same thing. It's going to be a good photo op. It's going to be a good chance to say, oh, look, I was the first one to do this. But beyond that point, though, the odds of actual progress coming out of it are slim to none, because outside of the photo op, where do we really stand? Ukraine is probably not going to agree to give up land. I don't think they're going to do that, because right now Ukraine has been adamant on keeping their land. They're not going to give up huge portions of land just to have a ceasefire. This is not going to permanently end the war, by the way. This is just a ceasefire agreement. Why would they give up all that land? Where is the upside for Ukraine? There is no upside to it. So outside of a photo op, we're really getting nowhere with this. So it's just going to be one for the history books, I guess you could say, but it's going to get nowhere.
This is going to go absolutely nowhere, and if we even force the ceasefire onto the state of Ukraine, it's still going to go nowhere, because y'all know what's going to happen then? This is the appetizer. This isn't the entree. A ceasefire is the appetizer that leads to the entree of peace. So this means that we're giving the Russians an appetizer that includes the entirety, and from what we've heard today, the entirety of the Kherson Oblast, the entirety of Zaporizhia, the entirety of Donetsk, and Luhansk. The Ukrainians will have to retreat from all of these oblasts to the border's limits, which you can see right there on this dotted line. That's where they will have to go. And so then, now that we've given them this grand appetizer, and we now recognize that as sovereign Russian territory, now let's get to the entree. So now what do the Russians get? And they're obviously not going to go, okay, let's just have a peace as it is. They've made that incredibly clear in prior discussions in Istanbul. They are not going to be doing that. They're going to be going, we want the Ukrainian government to be dismantled. We want the Ukrainians cut down the scale. We want it to be promised that Ukraine will never join NATO. We want to generally observe Ukraine's elections and pretty much run them to install a puppet state. We want to make sure that everything goes our way, or otherwise this ceasefire will break apart and we'll start it over again. But now with the international understanding that 20% of what used to be Ukraine is legally Russia's now, and there will be nothing done about that in the future. There's no way to reverse that once it happens. So that is something that is absolutely ridiculous. It's
also, you know, one other thing as well. I literally, this just came across my mind right now. I actually forgot to think about this earlier, but the areas in which Russia is trying to annex the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, isn't that where pretty much all the minerals are that we've agreed to basically cooperate with Ukraine to extract in the future? Aren't they all are in those regions?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so what is the plan from this point forward? If this is agreed to by Ukraine, are we going to start contracting with Russia to then extract the stolen minerals of the land that Russia now has officially stolen from Ukraine? I mean, what's the plan at that point? I mean, surely that'd be the only way forward.
I wouldn't even know. I have absolutely no clue at this point. The mineral deal meant literally nothing, because the mineral deal was supposed to largely, at least from the claim, say that the Ukrainians were due American defense, or at least American support, because we had an invested economic interest inside of their country. Now it appears that that was just generally the best way to describe it, a con job, and they're getting nothing from that. They gave away half of their mineral deposits to U.S. investors and companies, and in return, they are now being forced to give away territory and get no inherent value or benefit out of the mineral deal. So it also appears that that was quite truly, by all definition, a con job. There's no other way to look at it. So it doesn't really.
That's a really interesting one right there. Because I would imagine that if Russia took those territories right there, because I'm saying that we would have to contract with Russia to get the minerals, but in reality, though, Russia would really have no reason to let us have the minerals, and we've already signed an agreement with Ukraine to be able to extract those in the future. It's an economic partnership with Ukraine. So essentially, what the U.S. would be doing as well is giving up those minerals to Russia. Russia would then have a very vast access to rare earth minerals that the U.S. was so desperate to get their hands on that we literally put them through the ringer trying to get that mineral agreement signed. Y'all remember that whole ordeal? That was a nightmare and a half getting that signed on. So it sounds like we're going to let Russia take off with the minerals. I'm not sure if maybe they haven't thought about that yet. Maybe they'll change their mind if they hear this, maybe. But you know, it seems like we probably shouldn't give that to Russia, just for the minerals as well.
I'd have to say that it's just it's a crap show, a crapshoot all around at this point. But that is the diplomatic situation as it stands today, and it is absolutely abysmal. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that in the meantime of all of this, we were able to hear that the Russians are going to be testing a nuclear reactor-powered intercontinental ballistic missile today, which will be helping the Russian Federation largely to put more Americans under the nuclear gun for the greater deal. So while we're saying that the Russians are looking for peace, they are continuously conducting a unilateral nuclear arms race with themselves to find out ways to be able to kill more Americans deader and quicker. So it seems as though they are a country that certainly is pursuing a peace, and peace has to be achieved at all costs. As a matter of fact, we ought to lay down our lives in a Russian nuclear hellfire to make sure that the Russians always live in a peaceful state. I think that that is a very bold and selfless thing for the United States to do at this point, considering that we're going to be trying to reach a peace agreement with a country that is still going out of its way at this point to develop nuclear weapons in its own nuclear arms race. And who are they competing with? No one. Nobody out there in the world right now is developing their nuclear arsenals with a more modern and effective weaponry to kill each other with, except for the Russians. They're literally the only one in the world right now. And so we're going to talk to these people who clearly are adamant on peace, creating a nuclear reactor-powered ICBM. to be able to reach a peace with them. It seems quite believable. I mean, it's not like they're already pouring tens of billions of dollars into being able to find better ways to kill more Americans, so I'm sure that this is something that would be serious by all measure. Nevertheless, it does appear that a lot of people are talking about whether the Russians are stalling or not, and Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So for everybody that's tired of hearing the rant, this is our last poll on the topic. Then we're going to move on to the rest of our news. So the last question here says, do you believe that Putin is serious about his ceasefire proposal, or is it merely a stalling tactic? So about 79% said Putin is just stalling again on it, while 10% said Putin is serious about the plan, and 7% said it's too early to tell and it's a 50-50 chance. And also, I see people in the chat saying, you guys are assuming a hell of a lot of information. We're simply going off what the Russians are saying. The Russians are proposing taking Luhansk, Donetsk, and Crimea in exchange for a ceasefire. That's what the Russians are currently saying. So that's their information. We're not coming up with it. We're not making it up. That's what they're saying. So we're having to go off of that right now and take the Russian statements at face value because it sounds like that is their official plan. So I would say, honestly, I'm with the 9%. I think Putin is serious about that. I think that is a plan that he actually would accept in reality. That's not just a theory, because why wouldn't Putin accept the plan? It benefits him tremendously. It gives him a chance to regroup because, of course, the ceasefire will allow Russia to rebuild their military. It'll allow them to recruit more guys, and it helps them militarily quite a bit. It also allows them to officially get an international recognition of Luhansk and Donetsk as Russian territory, and Crimea as well. So it won't be disputed anymore from that point forward from an international perspective. So it would obviously benefit Putin a ton to do that. And also there's some other stipulations I can't quite remember off the top of my head that would also benefit Putin as well, but I'd have to go and reference the post. But I personally think that Putin is serious about it. He would take it. But the question is Ukraine going to accept it? And is the EU going to pressure Ukraine to accept it? That's the question. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think that Russia is serious about the plan, because we have to remember that from an analytical perspective, this is not a solidified peace treaty, and peace treaties can also be broken as well. This is a ceasefire. This is not an end to the war. This is an end to fighting just for now. So the Russians would accept this because this leaves the window open that literally at the end of this 30-day ceasefire, they can just start up the war again. It gives the Russians breathing room to be able to try and lick their wounds and to be able to try and rebuild and reorganize their armed forces at the now demarcated front line along the internationally recognized new Russian border and the state of Ukraine, so that way when that 30-day ceasefire ends, the Ukrainians and the Russians make it absolutely nowhere, because the Russians will still propose absolutely insane demands to make it to a peace treaty. They'll just start up the war again. So then they fleeced the United States, they fleeced the Ukrainians, and they fleeced the Europeans all in one fell swoop. And it's obvious to see. If you don't believe us right now, wait until about I'd say a month and a half from now, once this all comes to fruition, you'll see that it's absolutely correct. If there is a 30-day ceasefire, this is not going to be ending permanently. This is going to be most likely begin in 30 days or less than that, once the Russians make their new demands incredibly clear about what a peace treaty will have to involve. So that would be generally my statement or assessment on this at the moment. I think the Russians would actually accept this plan because it allows for them to gain even further territories inside of Kherson and Zaporizhia, as well as the remainder of Donetsk and Luhansk, and then it allows for them to prepare and get ready for the next phase of the war, where they'll be pushing on from there. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least in my opinion right now, and with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news for the night. We're going to be leaving that for what it is. Got to be entirely honest with y'all, not really happy about it. I think many of y'all can tell. It is putting not really the state of Ukraine at a disadvantage. It's putting the United States at a disadvantage in every single conceivable form. That's why I'm generally unhappy about it. Want to make that a little bit clear. Because some people always think, or like to think, not some people always think, but some people like to think, that our positions here on this channel are ideas where we toss the United States aside and we're all pro for the Ukrainians, or all pro for the Israelis, or for the Taiwanese. The only reason I speak on this channel with a great deal of emotion and fervor is because I view this as a situation that pertains to the United States of America directly and our foreign policy standing around the globe. It is incredibly important to remember that reputation, in a lot of instances, is far more valuable than any amount of money ever would be. And the idea of sacrificing or cashing in America's reputation as a serious force to be reckoned with that follows through on the words we say to be able to try and appease the Russians, which are certainly no country to be worthy of appeasement, is an absolutely ludicrous sort of a standpoint. Peace will not be achieved. The people who are saying that now are going to be the very same people getting hit by a Russian artillery bombardment in about a year when you get drafted into the army and you're fighting inside of Poland. The people who are saying today that peace must be achieved at all costs will be in the cemeteries of tomorrow because of the very monster of a war that they're creating right now from America's weakness and inaction on the foreign policy stage. You will all be around to live and die through that period, the people who are saying that right now, because y'all are planting the seeds for a far greater beast than the one we would have seen right now if we met it at the head. That is the truth of it. It is not because of the idea that we like war, or that we would love to see people end up continuing to fight a war that thousands of people are dying in every week. Wars are terrible, but one must understand that when faced with such a monstrous situation as this right now, there are only two options. We either press forward now and we deal with it when it's a small problem. It's a large problem on an international scale, but compared to what it will become, it's a very small problem right now. We can either deal with this now and cut it off at the head, or we can sit here and allow the Russians to pretty much grow and prepare for the war of untold scale that they are already working on right now, and let them kick it off when they're ready, and then let everyone else end up getting killed. Because I can promise you this, that if you went back in time and you actually asked someone back in 1940, what seemed better, letting Neville Chamberlain move forward with the Munich Conference of 1938, or facing off the Nazi Germans right then and there? I can promise you that everyone in 1940 in Europe and America would have said that Chamberlain should have faced off the Nazi Germans right then and there in 1938, and World War II would have been a footnote. It wouldn't have become the largest and deadliest war seen in human history. And so, with that, I once again want to give a large word of warning to many. The peace at all costs statements of today become the we must survive at all cost statements of tomorrow, because the war will be coming whether you want it to or not at this point. But moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, we have also been able to hear of significant developments inside of East Asia, moving our way back towards the Ukrainian front lines here in a moment. We were able to hear that U.S. forces are beginning to move closer to the North Korean border, as the U.S. Air Force is moving 31 F-16s and 1,000 airmen from Kunsan to Osan Air Base inside of South Korea, 80 miles closer to North Korea, for the Super Squadron Test Part 2, to consolidate combat power and boost readiness with South Korean forces, according to the Air Force Times today. We have also been able to hear in the meantime that a large air presence was spotted by the Republic of China off of their borders on the island of Taiwan, as the Taiwanese have detected 47 People's Liberation Army Air Force aircraft inside of the Taiwan Strait yesterday, an incredibly large number, markedly higher than the usual 5 to 7 that are seen or spotted by the Republic of China inside the Taiwan Strait. At the exact same time, we've also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China has issued a direct threat to the Republic of the Philippines, warning that they are playing with fire after the president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., said the country would be drawn into a potential U.S.-China conflict over Taiwan. The Chinese urged the Philippines to respect the One China principle and cautioned that such remarks undermine regional peace and stability, which in diplomatic terms mean that they threaten the Philippines with war if they continue to make such claims and statements. Whether the Philippines could ever count, or Taiwan, on future U.S. military assistance at that very crucial hour is up to the question at this point, because generally we're showing that anyone in Eastern Europe may not be given that same privilege or ability to call on U.S. support or greater Western support in the advent of a national crisis, such as an attempted armed invasion by the enemies of this republic. Moving on out of this area, however, in East Asia, we have also been able to hear of some further news inside the Republic of India, as we were also able to hear that the Republic of India is now halting all U.S. arms shipments. They did largely state that they were not going to be allowing any kind of actions or claims for the greater deal of F-35s being sold to their country, and it also does appear that they are not going to be allowing any more arms shipments further, although those arms shipments largely cease to exist, generally meaning that the Republic of India will not be accepting the purchase of F-35 Lightning IIs. We've also been able to hear an official statement from Narendra Modi today, the Prime Minister of India, who stated, had a very good and detailed detailed conversation with my friend, President Putin. I thanked him for sharing the latest developments on Ukraine. We also reviewed the progress in our bilateral agenda and reaffirmed our commitment to further deepen the Indian-Russia special and privileged strategic partnership. I look forward to hosting President Putin in India later this year, pretty much making it incredibly clear that India is siding with the Russian Federation and that any attempt at sanctions will not be swaying them. They are largely within BRICS pocket. Even if the Chinese hate them, they are going to be remaining within the BRICS alliance. So it does seem that even at this point, and at this impasse right now, the Republic of India has pretty much torpedoed their relations or future relations with the United States of America and have made it incredibly clear that no matter how much coddling the United States has conducted in the past so far, it means nothing compared to their everlasting and long, loving relationship with the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, South Africa, and Brazil within the amazing BRICS alliance. In BRICS they trust, and in BRICS they'll fall. But nevertheless, moving on out of the Republic of India and on into the Middle East, we also have some decent news that has been happening within that area as well. But before we move on from that, I do see a lot of people talking about the statements that the Prime Minister of India has made today. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so after the U.S. officials added an extra 25% tariff to India, Modi has now declared a desire to reaffirm commitment to Russia. And what are your thoughts? 63% said India will 100% side with Russia, while 23% said India is just posturing right now, and 11% said the tariffs were a very bad move. And this is a bit of a tricky one right here because a lot of people are trying to argue that the extra 25% tariff is the reason why Modi is now moving closer to Russia. And that is a valid argument, I would say, in my personal opinion. But also at the same time, though, it is imperative to stop these countries from buying Russian oil because that's the only way sanctions would work on Russia. But here's the problem. Now that we haven't put secondary sanctions on Russia, and now we've tariffed India, all we've done at this point, since we didn't follow through with our threat to Russia to sanction their oil, is we've pissed off India with no real purpose behind it. We have not sanctioned the Russian oil economy, so their oil is going to keep flowing perfectly fine without sanctions. And we've achieved nothing, but all we've done is piss India off, and now they're going to move closer to Russia. So it's had a really bad effect on that front. And unless we were going to tariff or sanction the Russian oil, there's no point to this. So before I was all in favor of it, but now that we've chosen to back out of our threat toward Russia, now I really think that they've just sabotaged the whole relationship because India was going to remain somewhat neutral, but now they're really not. So I'm with the 61%. I think India is going to move toward Russia. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's 100% clear that the Indians are moving directly back into the BRICS alliance and are not considering a viable future with the West. I have stated in the past a great deal that the Indians are in a fairly precarious situation as they find themselves teetering on the edge of BRICS and possibly trying to jump into the Western world, and that we have to treat the Indians with a great deal of calm and also a great deal of deference to make sure that they don't end up running back into BRICS because they can find security in the current economic alliance that they're in. Considering that we've now put a significant additional tariff onto the Republic of India for their continued trade with the Russian Federation for oil, now all we've done is torpedo the very fragile and precarious relationship that we were building with the Indians and have pretty much ensured that we will not be able to find a strategic military partner in the Indian Ocean to eventually counter a future Chinese sphere of influence within the area in India. So we've largely torpedoed that strategic ambition as of today, and it is quite clear that the Indians will most likely not be seeking any further cooperations with the United States of America, either on the strategic or diplomatic avenues from this point forward. Is that?
Oh, and also, by the way, I see people saying, well, India wasn't a great ally in the first place. I'll be honest with you, India was never considered like a close ally of the United States. So it's not like we lost, it's not like we lost Europe or something or lost Britain. It's not obviously anything like that. But it is bad though, because we were trying to keep India sort of down the middle to a certain extent. So that way they wouldn't be on the Russian side. And they also, wouldn't go further that direction. They were never going to be on our side because they're obviously in BRICS. So they're not going to be on the U.S. side 100%. But we could at least give them enough economic incentive to stay on our side. But the only reason to disrupt that was because of the sanctions. If we were going to do that, then I was all in favor of it. I thought it was a good idea to put those tariffs on India. But like I said, now that we backed out, we just sent them the opposite direction. So I don't know. Seems a little bit odd. Seems like they didn't really think that one through.
India is actually, in my opinion, a pretty decent loss, because while they've never been a great ally, and I got to be entirely honest with y'all, after our coverage of the India-Pakistan war that happened recently, I certainly was not a big fan of the Republic of India because the bot farms from Pakistan and India were unreal and absolutely brain dead. But beyond that, I would also say, beyond my personal feelings on the Republic of India, because the whole bot farm thing they did during the India-Pakistan war, I also would have to say that India is a somewhat important ally that we could have had within the region. For one, it would have completely splintered the BRICS alliance if they ended up eventually leaning heavily into the West, which we were slowly working on and have been working on for about the past 10 years. The other thing is that they are strategically located. It's great to have the European Union as an economic ally, but their strategic abilities only extend to the continent of Europe itself. They don't really extend much farther elsewhere, unless you're speaking about the British, who have 2 aircraft carriers, and the French, who have 1. Then they extend a little bit further, but not that much further. They don't have power projection abilities like the United States. The Indians, on the other hand, also do not have power projection abilities, but they are strategically placed dead center in the Indian Ocean. That is something that is a fairly important sort of a strategic partnership to have, because if India eventually allowed us to build military bases, such as air bases or naval bases, or release them inside of India, the U.S. Navy and Air Force would have been able to interdict China's economic machine at any point in the future that China is still working on trying to build right now, inside of the Indian Ocean. If y'all don't know, the One Belt, One Road program largely involves a great trade network with Europe, and largely wanting to try and separate or split the Western alliance into 2, and pretty much use the European economy to build up China's. And in the process, China is going to take that money and reinvest it into themselves and also every single country around the perimeter of the Indian Ocean. This means that all of China's economic partners that they would build up themselves would be connected to China through the Indian Ocean by maritime trade routes, which would ensure that the Chinese quite truly have their own economically sealed vacuum of a sphere of influence that would never really be able to be interdicted or threatened in the outbreak of war, meaning that China's main economic apparatuses wouldn't really be touchable by the United States, unless if India was our ally and we had forces based inside of India and India was on our side. If that's the case, we can completely destroy China's economic apparatus throughout that entire war and pretty much bring their economy to their knees as well as their military. But if India leans back into BRICS, that's not going to happen. Even if BRICS remain neutral in a China-Taiwan war and did not get involved, we still can't use India to try and attack the Chinese sphere of influence that might exist at some point in the 2030s to some greater degree. That now will cease to exist. So as far as the strategic implications, this is not really the greatest thing to see. Not that India was the greatest ally or a straight-up military ally, but we were slowly working them over the years towards that level, and considering the fragile relationship we had with them, it appears that it has now been completely torpedoed because of the implementation of the sanctions. And we're not even getting anything out of the sanctions or tariffs that we've implemented against India, because we didn't even follow through with the primary sanctions that were supposed to be leveraged against the Russians as extension of those. So we've quite truly done nothing but damage the situation within the Indo-Pacific region. So not really.
And also, some people argue, going back a little bit further, some people argue that the U.S. did the exact same thing with China as well, because ever since the Ukraine-Russia war started, Russia's been trying to grab as many allies as they can because they need as many as they can, so that way they're not left alone and on a lonely island where they have no support. So they went grabbing for China. China was kind of like, I don't know. They were kind of like, we might help. We're going to see where this goes and stuff like that. We're going to keep an eye on it and see what's going to happen with this, because obviously China had their own interest with invading Taiwan. But once the trade war started between China and the United States, and we started getting at really bad odds with China, then China really dove headfirst into supporting Russia, because they're like, oh, okay, you want to play that game? We're going to jump right into Russia's sphere and start helping them a ton with the Ukraine war. It seems like we repeated the same mistake with India at this time as well. The only problem is, though, we sort of gained something out of the China trade war to a certain extent. We gained zero out of this tariff with India, because we haven't stopped the Russian oil, and all we did was drive India closer to Russia. So it seems like we're driving our adversaries closer together, which is probably like the opposite thing that you'd want to do right now. You'd probably want to do the complete opposite.
I would have to say you probably would want to, but it doesn't really appear, to be entirely honest with y'all, that foreign policy is being handled with any sort of real precision or knowledge whatsoever. A lot of these sorts of decisions here, I'm just going to be completely frank with y'all, a lot of the decisions that are being made right now are literally the complete opposite of what you would want to make. And we're continuously making them. Now, the sanctions against, well, the tariffs against India on their face were a good idea. But if you're not going to follow through with tariffs against Russia today, what was the point of putting sanctions on India, or largely tariffs, yesterday? It doesn't make any sense. It's like saying,
No.
okay, everyone who does business with this bank, when you walk outside, I'm going to whack you on the head with a billy club. And you whack all these people on the head. They want to beat you to death now. And then you go, oh, by the way, I like the bank, actually. It's a pretty cool bank. It's like you just pissed off all these people who did business with the bank for no reason. Like, it makes no sense. It didn't even achieve anything, rather than pissing all these people off who had nothing to do with the bank, and then you don't even have a problem with them. It makes no sense.
But you know the good news, though? Is this flip-flopping like the style right here could work to our advantage, because this has happened before, folks. We went on a rant about the whole situation last time that the U.S. Did with Ukraine. They were trying to force Ukraine into accepting something they didn't want, and they brought Zelensky to the White House. They put him through the ringer, and we went on this whole rant and horse and pony show then as well. And it looked like it was not going Ukraine's way. But then, like, I think a couple of days or a week later, there was a humongous flip-flop, and all of a sudden it went the complete 180. So maybe in a few days or so, or maybe after the meeting takes place, we will see a complete flip-flopping here, and maybe it'll go back to the way it should be. It's just a shame that we have to go through this washing machine of like a strategy here to get to that point every single time, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it flips around, maybe our rant will be pointless again, but there's no telling. But as it stands today, it's a little bit grim.
I'd have to say it's a quite grim picture coming out from most places at this point. Just to be completely frank with y'all, I thought that today this was going to happen. To be entirely honest with y'all, that's why I was always saying, this should happen, but I don't think it will. I said that last night and generally got that down on the nail. But seeing how poorly handled it really is in every region, and the aftershock of it, like India now completely, really generally severing all ties with the United States entirely, or any future cooperation with the United States, and then China making open threats to the Philippines today about possibly going to war with them because they said they might join the war in support of the United States in the defense of Taiwan. And then also seeing that we're pretty much now abandoning our strategic ambitions for NATO in Eastern Europe. I mean, it's literally affecting all three major areas at the same time. The only one that isn't being affected right now is the Middle East, but I'm sure that's also going to be coming around here in the future. The Middle East will get their share of the whole, peace at all costs sort of a deal, even if it means that our enemies can now kill us by the millions. We'll have peace for our time. I'm sure they'll be coming around for them. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into a question segment for a brief moment to have a segue so that way we can move on into the Middle Eastern news and then the rest of the Ukraine frontline news that we have for the day. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat segment of the night, I want to give a huge shout out to BC Skyman for throwing in a combined $125 donation, and thank you very much, BC, for that massive support. That is by far the largest super chat and support of the night, and we sincerely do appreciate that. And I was just double checking here to make sure he didn't leave a comment. I don't think he did. I think he's left a super stickers here. Let me check, and it was just a super stickers with the Doge jumping around like crazy. But thank you very much, BC, once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say a massive thanks to you so much for the support, BC Skyman. You didn't throw in a comment, but you're an old guard and a channel legend, and you help us to keep this channel running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to keep this channel running for years. We wouldn't be able to keep it running tonight, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running well on into the future. And so I massively thank you so much once again, because, once again, if it was not for folks like you, we would have never been able to be around up until this day. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I'm told by Miss Disa that he asked for a live chat in the live chat a second ago, so we will grab a live chat question in honor of BC Skyman, and this one goes to none other than, let's see here, this one goes to Barry Moore, who said, if Russia threatened the sovereignty of Armenia and Azerbaijan, will the USA come to their defense?
No, I would assume not. We would generally consider that to be pretty much in Russia's backyard at that point. So I would have a feeling that we probably would not. Just to be completely frank, we don't have a lot of strategic relationships with the Armenians and the Azerbaijanis, to just be entirely frank in the first place. So we wouldn't normally come to the aid of either in that kind of a situation. We would condemn it, but we wouldn't really do much more than that. And as far as the current administration, absolutely not. Like, we wouldn't do it in a normal administration. We certainly wouldn't do it in this administration. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, or from what I would know right now. Because generally you want to have some sort of a strategic partnership or an economic partnership with the countries that you're coming to help out and defend, and we have neither with both of those countries. So with that, I hope that addresses it the best I can. A big thanks to BC Scamming for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our second super chat goes to Richard Huff, and he puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Richard, for that $30 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And he said, I've been here for years and I watch every video, but this is my first super chat. And thank you very much, Richard, for choosing to support the channel. He said, this is just embarrassing. And Putin is playing the West like a fiddle. And I haven't seen a fiddle played this well since the devil went down to Georgia. Honestly, though, Richard, it's literally been 100 years, almost exactly 100 years or so, maybe slightly under, maybe more like 90 years since the last time this exact situation happened. It was literally 1938, the Munich conference is when this happened last time. It's so identical. It is sickening how identical it is. And I think if someone would literally just bring that up, give the president a briefing on how the Munich conference went, if he would be willing to listen, I think he would completely change his mind. If there's any hope left, I think he would completely change his mind on the entire situation, because you can't even deny, even if someone is illogical, you can't deny the similarities. They're so striking. And literally, you could replace the characters with the current people right now. Hitler is Putin. You have Britain as the United States, which obviously brokered the whole thing pretty much all together. And then you have Chamberlain, which is basically the U.S. president right now. He still has a chance to back out and reverse his course, but he has to recognize that he's going down a path which has been proven by history to be ineffective. And right now, I don't think he's cracking the history book open to know that. So maybe someone around him who's brave enough to speak up and say something can say, hey, look, here, this exact thing happened before. You don't want to repeat it. And at least they spoke up and said something. If he chooses to ignore it, it's just whatever at that point. But that's what I think. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that the Russians are playing the West like a fiddle, because I gotta tell y'all folks, it's really hard to even go about this without people like they are in the chat tonight. You are very political. It's like, oh, come on. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's so annoying, folks, because you can't ever just look at something and be like, that's stupid. Because depending on who made the stupid action, if they're a Republican or a Democrat, then everyone acts like you're trying to criticize them because they're only a Republican or a Democrat, and it's not a stupid decision on its face. You know, a stupid decision is a stupid decision, no matter who's making it. And this is a stupid decision. And it's one that I don't even know why in the world we would do it. Because if I remember just 2 weeks ago, since 2 weeks is a fairly common sort of a time metric these days, I remember that 2 weeks ago or so, the president was saying that Putin was a little bastard, if I remember correctly, something very close to that, and that Putin's not to be trusted. He literally just said 2 days ago that Russia is an extreme threat to the United States of America and our national security. And other sorts of statements like that, just over the past few weeks. And so now, as of today, we are going to be inviting this bastard to America, and we are also going to be trying to sell away Ukrainian territories without the Ukrainians even having a say in whether or not they'll give up their own sovereign territory or not. That is absolutely insane. And it's also showing that the Russians understand that they're not playing America like a fiddle, because anyone who could look at the Russians and have a brain, or at least some sort of a concept about foreign policy, would know exactly what they're doing and not to fall for it. But the situation is that there's a guy making these decisions that has absolutely no understanding of how foreign policy works. And we're about to get bit in the ass for that quite well. It's going to be horrendous. Because, you know, Matthew was actually showing me something. I wish we could show y'all, but it was from the Associated Press's film library. But it was a newsreel from 1938 from the Munich conference, And it literally was saying everything that was being said today. Oh, Neville Chamberlain is definitely a man of peace. You can tell beyond all the propaganda they were saying that Hitler can't be trusted. Herr Hitler is just beloved by the German people and truly is a great man running a great country. He has high approval ratings. That's pretty much what they were saying. He's got high approval ratings. Look at Germany. They have these new shiny autobahns. This is clearly a country that we want to be friends with. Look at their shiny little roads, like we look at Russia's shitty, shiny skyscrapers or China's. We need to have peace with these people at all costs because war is bad and war must be avoided at all costs, although the Germans are practically begging for a war at this point. We sold out the Czechs, and then World War II started anyways. And it was for nothing. It was for absolutely nothing. We sold out the Czechs for nothing, for largely at that point. Then the Germans invaded Poland. So it was completely pointless beyond that time, 1938. That had nothing to do with anything. It may as well give the Germans the ability to arm themselves, because if y'all don't know, the Sudetenland, which is what was given up in the Munich Agreement, is the industrial heartland of the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia as it existed at the time. Look at it. I mean, you can even see the mines, the iron and coal mines that still exist here to this day, that are still there. Like, it was a huge industrial powerhouse for the country, and we gave it away. And what does Putin want in Ukraine? He primarily right now wants Donetsk and Luhansk. And guess what in the world that is to Ukraine? It is the Sudetenland of Ukraine. It is iron and coal heavy. And those two resources produce steel. And steel is a vital necessity in wartime production. So we are literally giving the Russians, if we give away this land to them, we are literally giving them the implements of war to furnish themselves for the war that they'll be fighting against us in the future. And we're giving it away to them for free. It's just absolutely insane. It's nuts, really. I don't even know where in the world this is coming from, because we all knew that the Russians were rat bastards 2 weeks ago, and the president also said that as well. So now we're going to say that these people are to be trusted in the Russian government, and that it's worth making a peace with them. And that is just, it's ridiculous. I'd have to thank you for the support. Oh, go ahead.
And also, the truth is that there is so much more to iron out with this. Like, even if the EU forces Ukraine to accept this ceasefire deal, which right now we have no clue right now if that's going to be the case, and even if the U.S. pressures Ukraine to take it and tells them, sign here, that's for your own good, you better sign, and Zelensky's like, oh well, I guess I have to sign. Here's the catch as well. They have to figure out who's the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant going to go to, because that issue is still unresolved. You can't just say, take Luhansk and Donetsk. There's a lot more to it than just simply saying, take those two regions. There's like, you got to define the border of them. You got to define exactly what Russia can have and what they can't have, what strategic resources are going to be given up. There is so much to determine in that. You can't just say, okay, take this and that, we're done with it. It doesn't work like that. The agreement has to be written in detail, and it's going to be so many holdups, even if they're forced to take the deal, that it's going to be months and months and months down the road before it's even ever signed if it was forced. And right now, the odds of it being forced, I would say, are still pretty low, because the EU has not made any indication whatsoever that they're going to abandon Ukraine and let them fall to Russia.
And also another thing, I saw someone say, let's see, as if foreign policy isn't all decided by the Pentagon and the CIA. Well, I can tell you this, if it was decided by the Pentagon and the CIA, they wouldn't be making stupid decisions like this. Like, I just tell you that up front. Also, that's a little bit stupid, because the president is the one in charge of making these kinds of decisions. It's not the Pentagon or the CIA. There isn't any shadow government out there, because if there was a shadow government, they'd be running it a damn lot better than it has been over the past 3.5 years as far as the war in Ukraine is concerned, or any other foreign policy situation has been concerned. Because wouldn't you think if the Pentagon was the one making these kinds of decisions, they'd be all over going into the war ourselves, to be able to make sure that the quote-unquote military-industrial complex is given as much money as they possibly can be, because the amount of shells that would have to be produced and munitions would be insanely high because of the rate of consumption of all the wars going on around the world. That clearly shows they're not running the show. And if the CIA was running the show, we'd be toppling governments left and right for fun. And so neither one of those are running the show, because if either one of those were, they'd be trying to use all of the resources they have at their disposal to be able to put the United States at an advantage. I mean, hell, if you look at the history of the CIA, they would go and do literally anything to the extreme, including torturing people, really sometimes dubiously for almost no reason, to just try and put America ahead a little extra against our adversaries. This is not the decision being made by the Pentagon and the CIA, and that's a ridiculous sort of a thing to even mention, that it's all run by the shadow government, because If it was, the last administration did hardly anything and just gave some weapons to Ukraine and did almost nothing beyond that. And the current administration is trying to just throw the Ukrainians out with the bathwater wholesale. So, it's like there are different approaches being made, both of them not exactly ideal, but both of them also equally goofy at the same time when you look at them on the surface. Giving Ukraine a trickle of support might as well just be drip feeding them till they die. Selling Ukraine out and throwing them to the wolves is pretty much leaving the Ukrainians to die as well in a different form. So I hope that does address that the best I can. But with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But a big thanks to you so much once again, Richard Huff, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, and our last one here goes to Hokey Redneck, who throws in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Hokey, as well, for that support and being a longtime channel legend and helping to keep the whole thing going. And he said, give another to the live chat. And we shall grab one more from the live chat right here. And this one goes to Paul Schultz, who said, what were the political advisors and environment like around Chamberlain at the time? Any similarities? And there were some striking similarities. And when I say it's identical, I mean it's very identical. When Chamberlain went to go meet with Hitler to go and sign this Munich agreement at the Munich conference, he literally got on the plane, and the narrator in the whole movie documenting the entire trip to the Munich conference was literally documenting the fact that Chamberlain's constituents were saying that all he was trying to do was go over to Germany and appease Hitler, which is exactly what he did. And they were giving him a ton of flack for doing that. And they said this is only going to lead to more war. They were literally making the exact same arguments against Chamberlain that we're making it against the current U.S. foreign policy right now. The exact same. I don't know about his like really internal political advisors. I don't have that information on hand, but the environment itself was very similar. But Enforcer, what say you?
It was very similar, and really quickly, I want to make sure to try and brush up on this as well, because Matthew was reading about this to a great extent today, but let me check really quickly. Let's see here. Oh, by the way, one thing that y'all may not know is that the Germans were actually engaging in a border war at the time with Czechoslovakia, and that's what forced the Munich conference, is that they were shooting at the Czechs across the whole border. And so the Czechs were, oh my God, this is terrible. Someone's got to come to our aid. And then Britain said, don't worry, we'll help you. And the Czechs said, really? And the British said, yeah, we'll sell you out. That ought to help you a great deal. And then they pretty much sold everything off to the Germans that mattered. But beyond that, let me see here. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can see about the cabinet. Oh, let's see here. Dang.
I will say, based on what Chamberlain was saying in his speeches, it sounded like Chamberlain sounded like the modern day U.S. president. I'll be honest with you. He came out trying to defend his point to the umpteenth degree. He would literally come out making speeches, like when he made the speech of peace in our time or peace of our time. He literally came out and said something to the effect of, all the naysayers said this wasn't possible, but Germany assured us they won't go to war with Britain ever again. And then 12 months later, obviously World War II started and Poland got invaded. So it turned out he was had the pie on his face on that one, which seems very reminiscent of what his supporters were telling him. The supporters of Chamberlain were literally telling him, what are you doing? You can't go give away the Sudetenland, the Czechoslovakian land, to Hitler. He's going to take it. He's going to see the weakness. He's going to smell the blood in the water like a shark. And he's going to then try to go for the entire piece, the entire Europe at that point. And that's what he did.
And you know what is so stupid about that too? Here's something that's also crazy, is that people would go, no, you can't give the Sudetenland over because it's written in Mein Kampf, the book Hitler wrote. He's going to get more territory. He wants to expand eastwards into Eastern Europe for Lebensraum. He's going to take Poland and eventually go to war with the Soviet Union and also every other ally in the Allies. Well, the Soviets weren't really an ally. They were in their own alliance, the Comintern. But Poland was an ally at the beginning of the war. Leading even up to 1939, they were an ally up till that point. And what Neville Chamberlain said, oh no, the Germans have assured us that they will stop in the Sudetenland. They're only going to take this extra part of the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia as it existed at the time, and they're not going to go further than there. And remember, there's already a track record at that point that the Germans are going around annexing everything. They had already annexed Austria. Let me go show you a map of Germany in 1938. Map of Germany in early 1938. Let me go show you all that really quickly. So, This was Germany as it existed before the annexation of the Sudetenland. This is what it had. Austria was a part of Germany and had been since 1937 because the Germans annexed Austria. They marched the army in and they just took it over. And nobody batted an eye in Austria because they were generally supportive of it. Then they went and annexed the Sudetenland. So this was the next part right here. This little part right here, the Sudetenland, annexed in September of 1938, that was given away in the Munich Conference. Then, not that much longer, in March of 1939, they just annexed the rest of the Czech Republic, the modern-day Czech Republic, and then created a puppet state out of Slovakia. Then, they moved on to going to war with Poland. They demanded the free city of Danzig, which technically wasn't even Polish. It was a free city, separate from the Polish government for the large part. The Polish refused to allow the Germans to have it, and the Germans invaded Poland in conjunction with the Soviets in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Act, or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty. This is something that is incredibly important, very important to remember, is that this had the very same beginning. Putin has made it clear that his ambitions lie beyond Ukraine. Ukraine is the Czechoslovakia of this era. We are either going to stop the Nazis in Czechoslovakia or they are going to move on to Poland, which quite literally is Poland. Like, that's no joke. They're just going to move straight to Poland. So what are we going to do? Are we going to stop this now and put our foot down and possibly threaten a third world war to stop a even worse war in the future? Or are we going to weak spine our way out of this and then see that a worse war happens just like it did in World War II? And it's going to happen this exact same way. It's guaranteed. The pieces are all in place. If the president doesn't grow a spine, which at this point I'm fairly certain that he won't, he will be the one planting the very seeds that will create the Third World War. It's happening right now. It's right in front of our eyes. It's literally the same playbook by both sides. And it's really, honestly, it's aggravating to look at because people are going to die either way. That's the truth of it, folks. People are going to die either way. But we get to choose right now how many of them die. Is it going to be a lot less or a lot more? And if we are assertive, it's going to be a lot less. If we're not assertive and we say peace at all costs, it's going to be a lot more people getting killed in the future. So what do you want to pick? You don't get to pick the dying stops now. The dying is going to continue. It's just a matter of how many of them are going to end up getting killed. And another thing that you have to remember is that right now, it's how many Ukrainians are going to get killed who are making countless sacrifices in their own country to defend themselves. In the future, when a lot more people are dying, it's going to be y'all. It's not going to be them. It's going to be you in America. It's going to be you in Britain, in France, in Germany, in Poland. It's going to be all of you. So right now, we are making the call, are some additional Ukrainians going to end up dying? And also, are we going to put our foot down and try and eventually stop it through our force and hopefully stop the bleeding and death and suffering of all these Ukrainians? Or are all of us going to bleed and suffer in the war of the future because of our inaction and weakness of today? That is the real crisis that we're facing right now. And I would say that the answer should be that we should put our foot down and that we should force the Russians to come to an amicable peace that we are on terms with and make it clear to them they will not mess with the West any longer. That is what we should do. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we want to move on into the rest of the news. So moving on into the rest of our news tonight, we were able to hear that the Israelis did conduct another major airstrike within southern Lebanon and took out Mohammed Washah Abu Khalil in the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. This is just north of the city of Zahle. And you see that right here. And it appears that it was a successful strike. In the meantime, we also were able to hear that the Israelis had put out their future intentions for the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu said Israel will not fully occupy the Gaza Strip. After the Security Cabinet approved a plan to take full control of the Gaza City, he stated the goal is to demilitarize the enclave, install a civilian administration that is not Hamas or the Palestinian Authority, a move aimed at freeing hostages and curbing future threats. I gotta be honest with y'all, folks, that is an occupation. Like just to cut through the BS here, that is an occupation, because if the government isn't being made out of Palestinians, then the only other people who could govern the Gaza Strip would be the IDF, meaning that it would be a military occupation. And some of y'all will be like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. That's what happened after the Civil War, if y'all don't know. The entirety of the former Confederacy came under the jurisdiction of the Department of War and was directly governed by Edward Stanton, the Secretary of War at the time. That was what was called the Reconstruction or the military occupation of the southern states of the United States, which lasted from 1865 all the way up until 1877. There were no states in the South. It was military districts, and I believe it was about, I think, 11 military districts that existed during that time. But that still is an occupation, by all measure. So a little bit interesting with that. That's, just wanted to clear that up. But that seems to be the Israeli plan. But moving on out of the Middle East, and on up into the state of Ukraine, we have been able to hear of other developments. One, we were able to hear that the Romanians have now declared that the Russians are sabotaging Azerbaijani crude, apparently filling it with chlorine en route to the Petrobrazi refinery, risking severe damage and a possible fuel crisis in the country. It is being seen at the moment from the Romanians as a possible hybrid warfare sabotage, and the incident led the government to declare an energy emergency for the time. We have also been able to hear, in the meantime, that the Ukrainians are trying to elicit an energy emergency in the Russian Federation, as they have now hit and destroyed a gas processing plant within the city of Slavyansk na Kubani, which we can see in this clip right here. And there's the smoke.
Got a little bit of a problem out there, it looks like.
And we also get to see that that thing was burning later a lot greater than it was when the last clip was taken. It does appear that this gas processing plant has been knocked out of action, at least for now. Meanwhile, further on north and towards Milarovo, we also got to see the Russians getting hit around here as well. It appears that it was some sort of a fuel storage facility that was hit by the Ukrainians overnight, and it does appear that the hits were pretty significant. In the meantime, we also have been able to hear, in additional news and details, that the Ukrainians have had a pretty interesting day on the front line so far as well. We were able to see that the Ukrainians' 425th Assault Regiment was able to take 32 Russian prisoners over the course of the past few days within the Sumy front. And we can actually see the video clips here showing them taking Russian prisoners and processing them behind the lines. And we can also see them all right here as well. These are 32 Russian prisoners that have been taken in the Sumy front alone. But that's the end of that clip, largely showing that the 425th has had some pretty decent success, at least within the Sumy front. Meanwhile, moving on into our location unknowns, we also got to see that things went pretty wrong for this guy. He was filming the preparations to an assault, and it appears that it ended poorly. Here's the clip.
Hey, look, it's Fred Flintstone.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, and their happy family. Oh! Well, I guess
Fred had a rough day at the quarry that day.
Bro, I guess you could say he was yabba dabba gone. But moving on from that, we also got to see this crop duster now turned into a Ruski duster. Take a look at this. It is a crop duster that has been outfitted for war and carrying 2 R-73 air-to-air missiles. It is a dogfighting crop duster. I've never seen this before in my life. So pretty neat. But there it goes.
I'll tell you what, this is a duster, but it's not dusting crops anymore. It's dusting something else.
Man, it's dusting Russian. But moving on from that, we also get to see the Russian casualty report for the day as well. And we were able to see that the losses were pretty decent. According to Ms. Disick here are the records, 238 drones is the 15th highest daily loss of the war. There's been a decent rebound for tanks and APCs, and numbers are generally within the average metrics again. We have been able to see that over the past 24 hours, 1,040 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 7 APCs, 126 supply trucks, 7 main battle tanks, 52 artillery pieces, and 238 drones. In general, it does appear to have been a pretty decent day for the Ukrainian armed forces. And as we move on out into the front lines themselves, while we didn't get a lot of video and picture evidence from largely most fronts, we were able to see that at least within the Pokrovsk direction, Ivan's been having tougher times. This was once a supply truck carrying a D-30 and some additional munitions for the frontline troops. It appears to now be rubble and cinder on a dirt road.
Орудие сгорело, пипивишками ударило, сперва начало гореть, потом прямое попадание арта прилетело минут через 10 прям в шишигу. Вообще.
A blid. And we see him showing the debris field. Quite the field. Well, that's the end of the clip right there, but quite interesting to see. But moving on from that and further on down the line and into Zaporizhia, we did get to see that the Russian Federation, according to the Institute for the Study of War, along with ourselves, are saying that the Russian Federation are demanding the remainder of the Kherson Oblast, here seen in blue, that's the part the Russians do not control, and the remainder of the Zaporizhia Oblast, seen in blue, that the Russians do not currently control. These are some of the territories that the Russian Federation are wanting to additionally claim in the ceasefire right now. So we will have to see if we oblige them on that request. Meanwhile, further on down and into the city of Kamyansk, we were able to see the Ukrainian armed forces have broken into the eastern side of the town of Kamyansk today and are apparently attempting to cut off the Russians further on north in the village and drive them out, showing that some limited Ukrainian counteroffensives are actually ending up being successful. We can also see the Ukrainians hitting the Russians within this town with GBU-62s, which we can see in this clip right here. And we see the smoke rising from the GBU-62 impacts.
Also, by the way, I just want to point something out real quick to folks. We even though tonight we are very upset with the foreign policy decisions being made, I am still, this is just my personal perspective, and also we don't get political on the channel either because we have a new politics rule here. We simply look at the policy decisions and leave it literally explaining one at a time. We don't go into like a whole thing of whether or not we like the individual making the decisions or not. Obviously, we have our opinion, but we're not really trying to put that forth on the stream. It may sound like we're trying to put it forward, but it's really a frustration with the decision itself. That's where we're trying to limit it to. Someone said, I hope you guys value my political stance some more now because you see what I'm saying about the president. Me personally, I still try to remain neutral as much as possible. Like I said, I have my personal opinions on it, but I try to stay neutral about it because when you start getting into the weeds and into the emotions about what you feel about a person, you really can't be objective with looking at their foreign policy or any policy that they have. So I try to stay just limited to the action. So hopefully it comes across that way.
I would have to agree, and I would generally like to say the same thing as well, that we're not here to get onto a political bandwagon, and that's something that annoys me a good deal, because over the past few years, we have criticized the prior president and the current president, the prior president being a Democrat and the current one being a Republican, over their foreign policy decisions. It has absolutely nothing to do with them being a Democrat or a Republican. It has something to do with whether the right decisions are being made or not by any sort of an empirical analytical metric, and it's a little bit annoying that a lot of people work on such a politicized framework that if you criticize a sitting president like the prior president or the current one over any given foreign policy issue or national security issue, people want to immediately go, oh, you're criticizing the former president, so you must clearly be a MAGA Nazi, or you're criticizing the current president, so you must be a liberal snowflake. There is nothing to that whatsoever that is supposed to be political in nature. It is entirely the fact that there is a clear, observable metric of what will work for this country and what will not work for it in foreign policy. And so far, we have criticized both quite fairly. A lot of people don't look at it that way because if we're criticizing the guy that they also dislike, they completely mute it and don't even really consider that it's a criticism. But when we start to criticize the guy that they like, then it's a huge ordeal. It's, oh my God, you're attacking God himself. How dare you? And it's a really sort of a difficult thing to move around because I'm not trying to get into politics, and I'll be honest with you all, I'm not really a big fan of the political commentators on either side here on YouTube or anywhere out there in the world at large. I find them to be quite annoying, and generally a lot of their standpoints are based in fantasy, not reality, from both sides. I'm addressing it as a foreign policy standing, and I'm addressing it from an empirical metric that right now, from what we can see, we either sacrifice some people today to fix the wrongs of our day and age right now, or we hold it off and we let people years down the road, not that long from now, suffer in the tens of millions or even hundreds of millions possibly for the mistakes and errors of today. That is what we're seeing right now. And that's what gets me pretty aggravated and pretty annoyed to sit there and say that the current president's foreign policy ambitions are absolutely asinine. That's what it largely is working off of. It's not working off of a like or dislike for any sitting president. It is working off of a prerogative or imperative to see that the United States of America and its citizens endure our day and age and the trials and tribulations and challenges of this time as best and gracefully as we can, all things considered. So I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least from my standpoint, because, you know, if you're coming in here thinking that because we criticize president or one president or the other's foreign policy initiative, we're going to agree with you on everything on a domestic political vein, that wouldn't be the case, because we don't even get into domestic politics, and I generally would largely avoid that to a great deal. I don't really find most of the domestic political talking points even worthy of discussing in my normal life. But moving on from that, it is time for us to move on up into Kyiv, because we do have the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1262 of the war. So without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Шановні українці, продовжуємо активну нашу переговорну роботу з партнерами, щоб була спільна позиція заради надійного миру для України. Дійсно реального миру, якщо всі однаково будуть сприймати можливості та загрози, тоді вдасться досягти саме сталого миру. Вже багато підтримки, це підтримка в нових умовах, коли озвучений дедлайн для Росії для припинення вогню. Ми бачимо, що росіяни на це не зважають. Принаймні, поки що не зважають. Сьогодні знов вбивства, сьогодні знов російські обстріли, більше сотні ударних дронів було у ніч на цей день проти нас, проти України. Ще протягом дня удари авіабомб, інтенсивні штурми на фронті, знов повітряні тривоги у наших містах, в наших громадах. Наведу тільки один з російських злочинів війни на сьогодні. У Херсоні абсолютно свідомо скидом з російського дрону був поранений 13-річний хлопець. Йому надається допомога. Тобто триває російське полювання на цивільних в Херсоні. Це свідоме знищення життя. Наказів зупинитись російській армії не давали. Говоримо з партнерами заради реальних кроків. Більше десятка розмов було з лідерами та главами урядів. Сьогодні прем'єр-міністр Польщі, президент Фінляндії, президент Латвії, прем'єр-міністр Чехії. Щойно я говорив ще з президентом Південної Африки, і найближчі дні також будуть присвячені дипломатії. Безпекові радники вчора говорили. Сьогодні у них продовження роботи. Андрій Єрмак координує радників лідерів. Міністр закордонних справ працює з колегами в Європі. Ми постійно в комунікації з американською стороною. І зі свого боку наші партнери говорять зі Сполученими Штатами Америки. Всіх об'єднує усвідомлення, що є можливість досягти як мінімум припинення вогню, і все залежить від правильного тиску на Росію. Саме там має бути ухвалене рішення, що цю війну, яку вони почали, вони ж мають і закінчити. Росія не рахується із втратами людей. Вони блокують всю інформацію про свої втрати, але вони не можуть заблокувати об'єктивну реальність. Те, що відчуває російська економіка, те, як припиняють роботу російські підприємства, те, як терпить збитки російська логістика. Санкції можуть спрацювати саме так, як нам потрібно. Я хочу подякувати сьогодні всім світі, хто нам допомагає завершенню війни. Сьогодні ж я погодив кілька наших нових санкційних пакетів України, і незабаром будуть відповідні рішення. Я провів особливу нараду з урядовцями та командою Офісу щодо нашої роботи на європейському напрямку із партнерами в Європейському Союзі та європейськими країнами поза межами Євросоюзу. Кілька принципових речей. Я хотів би подякувати прем'єр-міністру Польщі Туску. Я дякую прем'єр-міністру Чехії Фіалі, дякую Латвії та усім державам Балтії. країнам Північної Європи, усім в Європі, хто підтримує необхідність для Євросоюзу бути сильним, бути чесним щодо своїх зобов'язань. Маємо зміцнювати спільну оборонну роботу. Кожна наша спільна європейська оборонна ініціатива має працювати на 100%. Все, що допомагає спільній безпеці, спільному економічному зростанню, спільним інтересам, все спільне має працювати. Зокрема, має працювати інтеграція, всі процеси, які роблять Європу більш об'єднаною. Ми в Україні, ми багато зробили, щоб, зокрема, Молдова була поруч з нами. Була поруч з нами на європейському шляху. Ми допомагаємо в стабілізації всередині Молдови, щоб російське втручання не спрацювало. Ми допомагаємо стабільній роботі енергетики Молдови. У свій час ми наполягали, що Молдова заслуговує отримати кандидатський статус. Наша позиція зараз так само ґрунтується на справедливості, на реальних заслугах. Україна зробила все, щоб відкрити перший кластер у перемовинах про вступ до Євросоюзу. Це визнається Європою. Тому будь-які штучні паузи, будь-які штучні розділення тільки ударять по Європі. Україна разом з Молдовою мають рухатись в перемовному процесі. Я дякую всім лідерам і всім країнам і Євросоюзу за підтримку нас в цьому, за підтримку правил у Європі. І, звісно, вдячність воїнам України. Сьогодні День військ, зв'язку Збройних сил України. День наших воїнів, які роблять армію армією, бо без зв'язку просто неможливо ефективно діяти. Дякую всім вам, хто за будь-яких умов зберігає наші сили оборони на зв'язку. Пишаємось нашими людьми. Дякую всім нашим друзям України. Слава Україні!
And Ram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1262 of the news from around the world. And it's time for us to move on into the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And of course, it's going to be an incredibly fun question segment because we get to talk about literally anything and everything as long as it isn't religion, politics, or climate change. The third one. That one was added recently. But beyond that, it is time for us to move on into all of the little itty-bitty bits and pieces of questions and live chat sections that we are going to be getting into tonight. And it is going to be one hell of a time. One hell of a trip, I tell you. But before we get on into that, there were some things that I wasn't able to include in the news tonight because I was afraid that they may be copyright, which included some statements by the leader of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. And it does appear that he's made some incredibly interesting statements today about possibly going to war with NATO and inflicting some real damage on them. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
So unfortunately, we can't show it due to copyright issues, but basically Lukashenko, the Belarusian leader, he went onto a national TV network and made some wild statements threatening NATO today. He said something to this effect: "If Belarus could inflict unacceptable damage on NATO, we could. We may not defeat NATO, but we'll give them a good beating." That's what he said. Of course, that sounds crazy because it is crazy. Belarus is a really pretty much a failed state. They're a puppet state of Russia. So the only threat they really pose is being used as a landing ground for the Russian troops to then use that as a jumping point to then invade NATO. So that's where the real threat comes in. Belarus isn't beating anybody. I'm afraid not. They might get beat by Russia, but that's the only threat right now that Belarus can really talk about. But now, I'm actually with the 48%. I think Belarus is just appeasing Putin by saying that. But Enforcer, what say you?
Dude, that's the way he talks every single time that he talks. He always sounds like the Russian equivalent of like an idiot, you know, like, that's what he sounds like every time. They can be like,
and he brought that dog with him again too, by the way. Fluffy was in tow.
Dude, he always sounds ridiculous to me. But beyond that, I think he's appeasing Putin because the 78,000 man strong paramilitary police force, which is what they call their army, doesn't pose a threat to anyone, not even the Lithuanians. I think the as far as Baltic states go, they have incredibly small armed forces. I think a singular Baltic state could take on the Belarusians without breaking a sweat. So As far as Belarus's ability to defend themselves, I think it's fairly low. And I think they'd also get their asses beaten pretty badly, and even if a singular country in Eastern Europe went up against them. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. I don't think the Belarusians count for much of anything. But anyways, it is time for us. Also, let me go get that stupid dog. Let's see. The Lukashenko dog. Ah, yeah, there we go.
You see, I brought this dog with me. His name is Fluffy. He wants to run the country, but he's not quite qualified, even though he's more qualified than Lukashenko.
Here is my dog. It is my dog. I take it everywhere. It sits on dinner table with me. They shit on everything. Like he's very healthy. Look at dog. He's kind of cute, but still I carry it around everywhere. The point to become great disturbance. And it's very annoying.
What the hell is that look right there? Was that like the 1960s hippie look? I will say this. The dog is cute. Like, that's the only redeeming quality of Lukashenko at this point, is the dog is cute. Like, honestly, the dog might be pulling the strings. I know I've said it before. I think the dog might be the one pulling the strings.
I think it might be, because Lukashenko certainly doesn't have the brains nor the ability to run the country. I think it is the dog.
Notice he never goes to any important meeting without the dog. Like, what other leader brings their dog to every meeting? Unless it's like Ratatouille and he's pulling the hair and he's pulling the strings or something.
Dude, honestly, man, you know what Lukashenko's like? They're like, excuse me, Lukashenko, are you running a dictatorship? You've got to be ridiculous. This is absurd. And then he takes the dog and goes into a back room. What was I supposed to say to that? And then it goes, rah, rah. You were supposed to say that you're not a dictator and that you run the country democratically. Yes, you are right, dog. Like, look, the dog is everywhere. It's everywhere.
Man, the spirit of Putin speaks through the dog. That must be what it is. It's a Russian robot dog where Putin's voice comes over the speaker and says, Lukashenko, you got to do the right thing, Lukashenko. What the hell is he wearing a hoodie for in his office? That's kind of crazy. I'm plugging my merch. Bro, he's plugging his own merch. Bro, dude, he takes the freaking dog everywhere. This is in Zimbabwe. He took the dog to Zimbabwe. Could you imagine all the trouble they got to go through to bring this dog everywhere he goes? Like, they got to bring the dog food. They got to have somewhere for him to be. That's kind of wild, actually. Bringing the dog to the front. Look at this guy right here. He's treating that dog like it's just a commodity or something. Who the hell even is that? That's the leader of Turkmenistan. Okay, that's probably why I hadn't heard of him or seen him. But yeah, whatever that poor dog is right there, get that dog out of his hands. Like, he needs to go to a better home. Honestly, it does. Bro, I cannot stand the way Lukashenko talks. I wish I could get y'all a sound file of him talking, y'all, because once y'all hear him talk, you would know that what I'm doing is a one-to-one representation of exactly how he sounds. Oh, that's a cute dog. That's a corgi, I think. That is a corgi. That's not even Lukashenko's dog. But let's see here. Bruh. What the hell? Bro, why's he got a crank? What's he holding on the pole for? Dude, no, he's holding the crank. The pole's just in the background. He's holding an AKS-74U for what? Huh, I don't know. Maybe he, I don't know. Bro, that's what he does, bro. When you sit there and disrespect the dog, he whips out the cat. Like, he whips out the folding cat. Is Lukashenko married? I don't know, actually. Actually, that's a good question. Seems like kind of odd he's carrying a dog around with him if he's not married like this. Yeah, I don't know. The dog looks very happy, though. Like, is that his wife over there to the right? Or is that just a military lady? Let me go pull up Lukashenko. Let's find an answer to this. Lukashenko. Not the dog. Not the dog. Oh, let's go find him. So, his personal details. Oh, he does have a spouse. And there's no picture of her. Galina Lukashenko. Interesting. I've never seen a picture of his wife or anything. Is it like Kim Jong-un's wife where you like hardly see her? Let's see if we can find a picture. So that appears to be his wife. Interesting. And he's also he's also married to Putin too, I think. I'm his bitch. Like, it is true. Like, it's a side hoe. He's a like, they're like, excuse me, are you one of Putin's bitches? He's like, no, listen, the only credit for that goes to Putin. My wife is a sad piece. Like, it's my shadow. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well. We've gotten down to the bottom of that. He does have a wife. But for some reason, the dog seemed more than the wife. Coincidence? I think not. Maybe it's like David Cameron and that whole pig thing that happened back in the day in Britain. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. All right, so moving on from our poll question and on to our super chats, our live chats, and our Morse code decoders of the night. We are jumping right into our first super chat, which is a massive $200 donation, which just came in from
Damn!
Lord Cog, a channel legend. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, for that support. That's massive, by the way. He said, "Thanks for what you do. Tank over in the chat and LOC."
And a huge thanks to you for the support, massive support, Lord Cog. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And thank you for enjoying what we do, Lord Cog. Nights like these aren't really my favorite nights to get on air, to be entirely honest with y'all, because I like to cover news that I think is working towards the improvement of the country. Tonight's not really my favorite night of all nights, but I do thank you so much for enjoying what we do. Nevertheless, whether it's a good day or a bad day, we'll always be on air covering the news. And folks like you, with huge support like that, help us to make this channel possible. So huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that as Address said, the best that we can, because folks like you have been around for an incredibly long time, and we will make sure to take one from the live chat in your honor, Lord Cog. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And the one from the live chat is going to go to No Commentary, who said, "What are your guys' apocalyptic plans?" And if you're speaking about like an apocalypse, like a nuclear apocalypse, the sunglasses are going on, the beach chairs out on the lawn. Even though I don't have a lawn, I'll find a lawn, and then maybe for the one of the few times in my life I might drink a little alcohol. Maybe that might be my apocalyptic plan right there. Now, if it's World War III or something like that, my apocalyptic plan is, Andrew, we need to get on the YouTube channel and go live immediately because we need to cover that. But that's pretty much my plans. But Enforcer, what say you?
This is my plan.
What is this?
This is from the Terminator, by the way.
Your plan is to show an image of an orange screen?
That's Matthew, that's from the Terminator movie, by the way. That's just a little, like, meme.
All I can see is like a bunch of orange. I can't see anything else.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very small.
Oh, well, it's that skeleton exploding meme, you know, the one where, like, you know, it's like, or this one. Maybe this one's more, like, iconic.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so that's my apocalypse plan. There's not really much more to it. At least from where we are right now, in the city, we would be in the fireball, so there isn't really a lot of a chance of survival in the nuclear apocalypse for us. We would be one of the third most likely to go out in the first explosion. So I hope that does address my apocalyptic survival plans well, because beyond that, there really isn't one.
Bro, we're getting roasted on our apocalypse plan. Someone said, "Dumb plan, bro." How the hell you gonna roast me on an apocalypse plan? I mean, what, you got a better plan, buddy? I mean, put something in the chat. What the hell is your plan? You're gonna like go and like get in the refrigerator or something? I mean, come on.
I know. I'm gonna become Mad Max. No, you're not, buddy. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you know what's gonna happen? The world's gonna get nuked. You're going to try and survive for about 2 weeks. You're going to go, man, this is a bitch. And then you're going to roll over and starve to death because there's not going to be a lot of food. And that's one thing that people don't get. Okay? That's one thing people don't get. Even if 120 million people in this country are killed instantaneously, there's still 240 million left. Okay? So let's say all grocery stores, there's no more food and there's no food supply anymore. It's just the supply chain completely collapsed. So your industrialized slop feeder has shut down now that we all live off of. So how in the world do you get food? Oh, I'll go hunting. That's a great idea. 240 million people at this point are also hunting. The animal population is decimated within weeks. Like, completely decimated, and almost nothing is left. Maybe some birds, but those will also be eaten on Tuesday. So there is no food left in the country. You either have had months of stockpiles of food, which still you will most likely get shot and killed and people will steal that from you, or you will somehow end up trying to survive or something along those lines, but the chances are slim. You have a half and half chance of surviving after the bombs fall, and I generally had to be honest with you, I'm not a betting man, but a 2 in 3 odds of not surviving the next 2 years, well, the bombs themselves and the next 2 years after a nuclear bombing, my plans don't exist. Like, the chances are incredibly high, I just wouldn't survive. The chances are incredibly high as well that most other people wouldn't survive. Like, another thing that people don't think about, especially here in the American Southeast, is, it gets hot here. It gets really hot in the day and the night. Right now, it's 80 degrees outside, just about. Like, it's saying that on the computer. 80 degrees. And on a bad night, it can get up to 90. So you're probably going to just die a heat stroke someday. A lot of people do. And considering that there's no air conditioning, and back in the day, the South was designed to deal with those hot temperatures. Nowadays, we're not because of air conditioning. Bro, you're living in a house that's designed not even for hot weather like this to ventilate air properly. You're just gonna freaking die from heat stroke. Like it's near in like surviving past a nuclear apocalypse would be hell. Like generally, I would actually largely prefer to get wiped out in the actual nuclear bombing than survive it, because surviving it would be horrendous in every single regard. So I hope that explains why my plan doesn't exist, because in practical practice it would be a lot more difficult to survive than a lot of people would think, to the point that you would kind of wish that you hadn't. But anyways, we're on to the next one. But a big thanks to you for the support, the massive support, Lord Cog, and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Hokey Redneck yet again, and he puts in a $50 donation for the second time of the night. Thank you very much, Hokey, for that second support. He said, Operation Barbarossa.
Operation Barbarossa. I don't know. You mean that pirate Barbarossa from Pirates of the Caribbean? Or that time that the Nazis lied to the Soviets and then they invaded them? It's probably that other time, the latter. Let's go pull it up. Operation Barbarossa. Wow. This was a wild one. Look at some of these pictures. Crazy, right? Crazy. But let me see if I can get y'all some better info. Let's see. How far did they make it? Let me see. Oh, this was all Axis holdings in Europe by the way. And also, Finland hadn't been taken over by the Nazis, but they liked the Nazis because they equally all hated the Soviets. So it kind of all came together. But beyond that, this is what the Nazis and the Italians had under control in Europe at this point. And this was the Soviet Union, which is what they invaded after the, Operation Barbarossa kicked off. Let me see if I can show you how far they made it, because this is really the extent of Nazi control in Europe. Oh, look, that's how far they had made it by August of 1941, which isn't that far after the invasion opened. The invasion opened in June of 1941. This is what they had done by August, literally a month later. They had already pushed pretty much into where the Ukrainians are fighting right now, literally at the city of Kherson, within a month. That's actually, the Russians could only have wished to see their offensive plans kick off this well in Ukraine. I think this is what they were actually hoping for.
Probably so, but it didn't go that way at all. 3 years later, it's an embarrassment and also a disaster for Russia. So no, it didn't go too well at all. Seems like I'm not really sure, honestly. I think Putin's a good example of what happens when you don't listen to your strategists, because I'm not sure of how many people in Russia were actually pushing for the Ukraine war outside of Putin himself. I think Putin might have been the strongest proponent of actually starting the war for his own personal reasons.
Yeah, I would think so. Also, Matthew, is that a Popov up there? In Army Group North? Popov? No way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, look, it's Army Group North, General Popov.
Interesting.
Huh.
Didn't we have a General Popov a while ago? What happened to him?
Wasn't it Ivan Popov?
Yeah, it was. Didn't he get either locked up or knocked off or something?
I think he got purged. I think the Popov of back then got purged, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's kind of a thing in Russia. If you're named Popov, you just get purged, apparently. But there's Kuznetsov.
Or you make alcohol.
It could be that as well. Let's see. Any other names that... Well, not really a lot of important Soviet names throughout the rest of the war. Most of these people were removed from their positions or purged. But beyond that, I kind of get an idea they weren't doing too well. But let me show you how far they made it by the latter part of the year. The end of the year. We want to get to... about right here. This is where they had made it by December of 1941. 20 miles out from Moscow. It's a little bit of an interesting thing, when you look back at it. It's crazy. The Russians tried to pull off what the Nazis pulled off against the Soviet Union on Ukraine. And the Russians are 3.5 years in and have only taken about 20% of Ukraine. The Nazis started the invasion of the Soviet Union, and within about 6 months had taken the entirety of Ukraine, the entirety of Belarus, the Baltic states, and a large swath of Western Russia as well, within 6 months. That either gives you the idea that the Germans were really good at fighting, which they generally weren't, or that the Russians sucked at fighting back then, which they certainly did. So, quite an interesting thing. It's a It's a very interesting thing, actually, when you think about it like that. But beyond that, Operation Barbarossa happening again in the modern day, highly likely, at least in my opinion, from the Russian side. They would probably kick one off into the Baltics and Kaliningrad, into the Suwalki Gap as soon as they could, and then everyone would be going, "Oh, what happened? How did that happen? We got peace. What happened?" And then everyone would be all confused and disoriented and everyone be talking about no one could have seen that one coming, and you could have if you had some eyes. It exhausts me, people, to know we're going through the same motions that we did going into World War II at this point. We're doing it again, and there's still people out there who were so ignorant, they're still saying what they said back then. "Oh, it's going to be peace in our time. We just want the killing to stop. If we stop it now, it'll stop for good." Although they made it clear they're wanting the rest of Eastern Europe, it's going to stop. It's like, it's not going to stop. And it's just a shame because, if you read history, you know what's coming around the corner. And it's inevitable at this point, especially if we keep making the decisions we're making right now. And it's going to happen again. And then y'all are all going to be like, all the people who are saying they love peace right now and they want the killing to stop, y'all are going to be over there in Eastern Europe in the Army or the Marines or the Air Force or who knows what else. Or maybe even in the Eastern Pacific, maybe. Just like World War II. And then y'all can be going, "Wow, I didn't see that one coming. That's crazy. Peace in their time? It was a falsehood. He was planning on going for the rest of Eastern Europe. That's nuts, right? Crazy." And it's
peace in our time. Peace in our time. You want to know the best way for the president, if he's so concerned about his legacy, which he is, let's find a way to make that legacy count, in a real world sense. The way to make it count is not to repeat what Neville Chamberlain did. Neville Chamberlain went down as a goof. He's known in history as a massive appeaser. When people mention appeasement, they mention Neville Chamberlain. He also got his Nobel Peace Prize nomination revoked because, obviously, when Poland was invaded, that proved him wrong. It made him look like a jackass, basically. So you don't want to repeat that. So maybe if you try the opposite approach, which is let's stop it before it begins. Before it gets off square one, let's stop the Russians and not let them get any further. And let's try it that way. Sure, you won't get instant gratification. You're not going to get the instant nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. But over a longer period of time, when people look back on it, they're going to be like, "Hey, look, that president right there who tried a different idea that was proven not to be a failing idea, he did his best, and that maybe is deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize." That's what I would think, personally.
Yeah, you would think. But it's But the cheaper option is always the better option, everyone. Forget long-term benefit. We've just got to shoot for Nobel Peace Prizes now in Armenia and Azerbaijan and Thailand and Cambodia and India and Pakistan and Israel and Iran and now Ukraine and Russia again. We're just shooting for as many Nobel Peace Prize nominations as we can get. About 7, maybe 8 if we're so generous. Maybe even 9. And all of them are going to implode because none of those ceasefires are holding up at all, or they're incredibly fragile and will not hold up for much longer. That's the truth of it. So, and also, why the hell is this guy, I just got to ask this on a personal level, why is he so obsessed with this Nobel Peace Prize thing? What does it matter? So you get a little piece of metal with a ribbon attached to it. What does it matter? What is the point of that metal? What does it do? Does it unlock the 6th dimension? Do we unlock space travel? Does everything just become infinitely cheaper? Do our lives get better? No, nothing changes. You just get the stupid little metal. That's all it is.
Here's what it is. Every single president usually picks one aspect of the presidency that they want to hone in on really strongly, so that way their legacy becomes known as that. I'm not going to get political here, but the prior president, I got to say his name, Obama, he made his focus healthcare. He wanted his legacy to be known as he revolutionized the healthcare system. I'm not saying whether or not it was effective or not. I'm not getting into that. That's politics. I'm not trying to get into it. But that's what he wanted his legacy to be known as, is the healthcare overhaul. Then you move on to, let's see here. Let's move on to the current one. The current one, he's trying to make his legacy peace around the world. He wants to be known as the historical peacemaker, one the world's never seen before. The problem is, though, cheap pieces and cheap ceasefires will not create a legacy. It's like building your legacy on a shaky foundation. It's going to only last for a short period of time, like all the ceasefires have lasted for only a short period of time. And that's not legacy building. That's called, building a list of failures, in my personal opinion. So the only way to have like long-lasting pieces is to ensure that it's built on a strong foundation, which means stopping aggressive countries from invading and going any further, putting your foot down on it, and then coming to a peace from that perspective, not just coming up with a cheap ceasefire.
Yeah, and also I just gotta say, folks, shouldn't the aim and pursuit of a public servant be to benefit the country at all costs, even at their own detriment, instead of going out of their way to try and personally enrich themselves with a Nobel Peace Prize? There's nothing to it. Like it's not even like it actually enriches you. It is a worthless metal. That's it. That's all this is. It's really as worthless as any other award. Like I'll be honest with y'all, I'm just not really a big fan of getting awards. Like it doesn't really make all too much sense. Like if I do a good job, I don't really care. I'm just doing it to do it. Like if people say, if someone says, "Oh, we get the Pulitzer Prize for journal," do I give a shit? No, I don't care. Like I don't care about the Pulitzer Prize. I don't care about any prizes or any medals. I'm doing this for the love of the game. I like to talk about news and I like to talk about things that I think in general benefit this country. That's all there is to it. If I got a medal, that's great. I don't really care, honestly. Like, I'm honored that they would find us to be that high of a quality that they want to give us one, but that's not at all what I'm here for. If I ended up becoming the president, I wouldn't want a Nobel Peace Prize. I wouldn't want any medal. Like, I honestly, I wouldn't even want a medal from a sitting president. If they want to give me the Presidential Medal of Freedom, let me go pull that one up, because this is the highest civilian award they can be given. Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here we go. I don't really care. Like, if you get this, so what? What is the point? There's no point to this thing. Like, does it change your life? Like, does it do anything? Absolutely not. It does nothing.
You're right.
Like, it's just absolutely stupid. Yeah, but also, it does look kind of drippy, I will admit, at least in this thing here. But beyond that, it doesn't do anything for anyone. And so, what's the point? What's the point? What's the point of making your whole life? I'm going to do everything to get a little goofy piece of metal. That makes no sense. So, that's what I have to say about it. Going around the world and screwing everything over, pretty much, or doing something cheap to try and get a stupid little piece of metal that doesn't matter to anyone except for himself. It makes no sense. It's the most backwards ass way of going about something. It's the exact same way Chamberlain went about it, and it was an absolute disaster. Is
it made out of real gold? The award, like the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, let's go find out. Let's see.
Might be easier to type the question in.
Well, it would be easy, man, but we never do anything easier. Here, let's see. Reverse. It doesn't really look like it's even made out of gold. Like maybe it's plated in gold or something. Well, let's see. Nobel Peace Prize. Is it gold? Oh, so it is made of gold.
Oh, wow. It's made of real gold. 18 karat gold metal, plated with 24 karat pure gold. Sign me up for a Nobel. I'll take one.
I feel like the jet from Qatar, though, was a better... But anyways, moving on from that joke. I'll just stop that joke in the middle of it.
There's a cash prize, too, says Ashley Redmond. How much is the cash prize?
Oh, really? How much is the cash prize? Damn. Well, let's see.
Man, you get paid for peace. It pays.
11 million kroner, which is $1 million US dollars. Wow.
Okay. Need to repair the engines on the jet. I see.
I got to pay the bills. Got to keep the electricity on.
Keep the lights on.
Yeah, you got to keep the lights on, Nothing like a little Nobel. That's, let's see.
You know what? You know what's even better? They got the man's face on the coin right there. What if they make a custom head on the coin? They put the best face ever on the coin, change it immediately. I tell you what, make it President Coin. That's what they say.
Coinbase. Make it Coinbase.
Yes, it could be a Coinbase if you want some.
Man. It's the greatest thing ever. Coinbase! But anyways, with that, folks, I hope that does address that well. But maybe there will be a Operation Barbarossa 2.0. Maybe. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here is going to go to none other than LC39A. They're in a $120 donation once again. And thank you very much, LC39A, for that support yet again. And we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, how effective was the Marshall Plan?
Very
Me personally,
effective.
I would say it was extremely effective personally. We had to help the European economies rebuild after World War II, because if we didn't, then they were going to be in some trouble. So we had to help them out, and that kind of indebted them to the United States. So they weren't going to sort of sway over toward the commie side or anything like that. They were going to stay with the U.S. and they were going to stay loyal to us. So it looks like it worked out pretty damn well. If you ask me, we have good allies in Europe. But Enforcer, what were you going to say?
I'd say it worked out quite well, because the Marshall Plan was a large part of the Western European powers' regrowth of financial success after the war, because most of those countries were completely bankrupt and heavily damaged, if not nearly destroyed, especially Germany after the war. So all of it had to be rebuilt from the ground up. And the money that we put in the Marshall Plan, it's been proven by all of the governments of these European countries that were a part of the Marshall Plan, as well as the United States itself, through every statistical metric. It is what allowed for these countries to bounce back, and even better for the large part, after the end of World War II. And their GDP statistics prove it. Like, if we go and look at the UK's GDP, you can see that it would start to massively grow, especially on into the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. But generally, it did recover quite successfully and grew rapidly still after the end of World War II. So there's a decent metric to say the Marshall Plan was wildly successful for its time, and it generally does show that investment in our allies is a return investment in the future into our own success. Because if the Europeans didn't have money, we didn't have any trading partners at that time. Because back then, it was even more so the case, honestly, that the Europeans and North America were really the only significant trading partners in the world. There wasn't really any major economy in Europe, well, in East Asia yet at the time. Australia and New Zealand kind of count, but not in a great deal. There's not a lot of people living down there, especially back in the 50s. Japan was being rebuilt after the war as well, and was technically a part of its own Marshall Plan. And South Korea's economy literally did not exist, and Taiwan's didn't either, or the Philippines. So the only trading partners that would have mattered post-war that we could have made money off of were the Europeans, and they were so broke as a government and as a country, they couldn't really afford anything. So we had to actually pay these people in Europe to be able to rebuild themselves, so that way they would end up putting enough money in their pockets that they would have room to buy some American goods. And then we could ship them over to them, and we could make ourselves some money. And so that's generally how it worked. And it worked incredibly damn well in the end, too. So I would generally say that the Marshall Plan was one of the most successful foreign policy projects that we've ever seen in this nation's history. And so with that...
And also it bought us the right to put military bases all over Europe too, and operate them basically as like sovereign places in Europe.
Man, even better, we just do that like everywhere. Like we do that whether we did that or not. Like, you know, like in Poland, we got bases in Poland. In Romania, we got bases in Romania. Did they ever get money from the Marshall Plan? Nope. Did we put bases there? Oh, hell yeah. They invited us into their countries because everybody knows that being friends with America is a very beneficial thing for themselves, and also it's a beneficial thing for us, because the more allies we have, the more trading partners we have, and the more trading partners have, the more money we make, and they also get in on that trade at the ground floor and build themselves up as well. I mean, look at Poland's economy just in the past few decades. Look at their GDP. It is insane, the kind of growth that they're getting. Look at this. 812 billion to 914 billion from 2023 to 2024. That is a near 10% GDP increase in the growth rate, and that is insane.
That's what happens when people feel safe in a country and they feel like they can live there without being harassed and things like that. They tend to grow their businesses. They tend to feel safe. They have families and things like that, and they feel like there's hope. So yeah, Poland's doing a great job.
Yeah, Poland's doing great. I see some people saying, well, that's changing rapidly. Well, for now it is, but it'll change back the other way, because once people start to realize what they're missing out on, they'll start to change their mind. Or hopefully, there will be people in government who generally know that that is the way things are. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support, LC39A. And I hope that does address that question incredibly well. And a huge thanks to you once again for the massive support that you're throwing into this channel that helps us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I see a lot of people saying, wow, the bots are crazy in here tonight. And honestly, it's been a mixture of bots. And also, someone said, also, there's asses in here too. Like, I knew we were going to get backlash tonight. Like, I knew going into this we would. There are people that cannot listen to objective reason to save their life, basically, because they're too ingrained in politics to listen to it. So, you know, we can't appease like the hyper political people. Like, if they're going to like not take kindly to an objective like an analysis of something, we can't help that. So, I mean, it is what it is, basically.
But here's how it works, folks. Like, I'll just be completely honest with y'all. Back in the day, before this president was the president, when we criticized Biden, the extremely political people from the left would leave. Like, they would get pissed off, they'd cuss us out, and they'd leave. Now the current president's a Republican, which is Trump. And when we criticize Trump, the people who lean extremely hard right, nothing new to this. This is just the ebb and flow of the channel. The people who are extremely hard right, instead of the hard left people like it was for the past 3 years, now they get pissed off, then they cuss us out and they leave. This is nothing new to the channel, by the way, because we criticized, like, and people want to act like this isn't the case because now we're criticizing their guys, so now it's their time to, their time to shine, I guess. But we criticized Biden's foreign policy as much as we criticized Trump's. It's just that because right now Trump is the president, he's the one in the hot seat who's getting criticized. Everyone acts like we gave no criticism to Biden, who was a Democrat, when he was the president. Bad decisions are bad decisions. It does not matter your political affiliation. You can look at something objectively in foreign policy if you know how it works and just go, this is a bad choice. This is a bad decision. And we said that plenty of times. Like, just to bring up a couple of examples, just to make sure to remind everyone that we are fair on this channel. Back when the other president was in charge, which was Biden, we criticized his position on the Iranians because it was clear that they were developing a nuclear weapon. He was doing nothing against them. We also said that airstrikes against the Houthis were weak and we need to take further action than what he was doing, which were limited airstrikes against the Houthis. We said that we need to take concerted action throughout the Middle East to put down Iranian terrorist forces that are being funded and supported directly by Iran. We said that we need to have a stronger stance in defense of Taiwan against the Chinese, because we had practically no stance back then, much like we do now. And we also said that the support to Ukraine needs to be far greater, and the United States needs to have an aggressive and assertive stance towards the Russians, because strength is what the Russians respect, and that's what they'll fear. We made all of those same criticisms back in the day when Biden was president that we're making right now. And it's just that because we aren't making it against the guy that they don't like, that then now it's an issue. Now you're offending me, like these people who are saying this in the chat personally, because now you're saying that it's not just the Democrats who are fallible. Now it's also Republicans who are fallible and can make mistakes in foreign policy. And now I'm deeply offended. And that's how it works with political lunatics. Like, there's no way to appease any of them. You can like the crazy thing is that to be a political person these days, you have to have literally no morals, not even morals. You have to have no actual hard set things that you're for. Like, if you sit there and say, I'm for making America strong. Today, that could mean that we're going to curb stomp the Russians. And if the guy at the top, whether it's Biden or Trump, if they tell you tomorrow that it's actually to become allies with the Russians and to forsake the Europeans, now you just completely change your opinion overnight. And so our opinions can remain the same here on this channel no matter what, and they do. Like, if you go back and listen to us in the first 100 days of the war and you listen to us now, our opinions on everything has not changed. Everything around us keeps changing, and the opinions of these people, whether they be Biden or Trump, they are always changing. And then people want to sit there because we're not changing with the times like some kind of a political shill, and we're actually keeping with what is inherently in America's interest. Then they want to act like we're the problem. And for those people, they're too ignorant or too unintelligent to really care what they think, just to be completely frank. If they're that malleable that they can't even think for themselves, and they will literally do a complete 180 even in their own logic and line of reasoning overnight, there's no way for us to appease those kind of people. I don't work in nonsense.
That's why they're forcing us to get a real ID, because you can't just change your identity to Frank whenever you feel like it. If you're Andrew, you're Andrew. You don't just become Frank when you want to.
Exactly. That's why we need a federal database. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. I know a lot of our old guards know that time and time again. Y'all were around over the past 3 years before this half year that's happened so far. Y'all remember when we criticized the prior administration and all of the actions that they make. And y'all remember, I remember this. I remember this so well. because the president was left-leaning at the time. This current one's right-leaning, but back then this was the case. Back then, because the president was left-leaning, and we don't hold any bars, when the bad decision's a bad decision, we call it for what it is, there were people out there all over the internet who would say, oh, the enforcers are MAGA Republicans. They're practically hyper-nationalist Nazis. People would say that all over the place because we criticize Biden's foreign policy decisions. And then Trump becomes president. And so now overnight, we turn from being MAGA Nazi hyper-nationalist Republicans, according to the detractors, to now we are liberal snowflake, blue-haired, matcha tea drinking people. Overnight, like literally overnight, the standpoints and the analysis stays the same. The criticisms are the same, and our criticisms of the sitting presidents are the same, and then the political criticisms completely literally take a 180 from one political direction to the next just because the person's different. It's a hilarious thing to see. You can't appease extremely political people, folks, and if you ever try, you're going to die trying, because there's literally no way to make them happy. They're always going to be unhappy. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so moving on here to our next one. Also, by the way, Peter Schnotzel said, we both know that politics can be analyzed with critical thinking. Yes, in an academic sense, yeah, somewhat. But in the public, though, politics is like the emotional cutoff button. If you start talking about politics, people cut off the logic, they go full on emotion. And you really can't discuss things or debate things that way, in my personal opinion.
Anyways.
Anyways.
Like, best example of that, Peter Chanel, we can just look back a couple of nights. Look at the short conversation we had on climate change, and look how violent everyone got about that. That's how every single political discussion is in America these days. It doesn't matter whether you find common ground or you agree to disagree. People get extremely violent over everything. I mean, in theory, you should be able to talk about political topics with a great deal of reason and depth, but a lot of people who are political these days, I would say that most extremely political people on all ends these days are extremists and radicals, and you cannot speak reason to either group. Because when we brought up the whole thing, just as the example, because it happened on the channel, of the climate change thing, now that we're revisiting it, the people who agreed with me, like I saw them in the chat, some of them were getting extremely violent against people who disagreed with me, and then the people who agreed with Matthew were getting extremely violent towards me and people who agreed with me. There was no common ground in the chat to be found on that. People just went violent and feral because the topic was even mentioned, and that there was two different opinions on it. That's how politics works these days. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Howard Mendelson, and he puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Howard, as well, for that support and being a longtime channel legend, and we do appreciate that. He said, Is there a Neville Chamberlain Peace Prize? No, there's definitely not one. You don't get a prize for that. I guess the prize for Neville Chamberlain was his legacy got ruined by that. And also, it was like the biggest womp womp moment in history because literally 12 months after he said, the German leader said he's not going to invade Britain or go to war with Britain. And like 12 months later, literally, he started attacking Poland, and you turned into World War II. So, quite a pie in the face. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta go get this clip. Let me see. Let me make sure. Oh yeah. You know what? It's crazy, man. They actually got the clip. Let me see. Y'all want to see a clip where FDR actually sent a letter to Hitler asking him if he was going to invade anywhere else? This letter was sent in 1938, by the way, before World War II broke out. Y'all want to see how Hitler generally responded to it? This was Hitler. Let me go get this.
Can we show those? Are you sure we can show those?
I think we can, because it's just an excerpt of him speaking with subtitles.
I don't know. Like usually that stuff's like copyrighted by some historical archive.
Oh yeah, that's true. That is true. But basically, FDR sent Hitler a letter and asked, "Hey, are you going to be invading the rest of of Czechoslovakia, Poland, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France?" And Hitler was reading it off in front of the Reich Chancellery, and everyone was laughing at it, and he was laughing at it too. And he said, "Of course, I told him no." And this was in 1938, by the way, right after the Munich conference, and he was already laughing in the face of everyone in the West, because most everyone in the West was taking him at his word, and he clearly knew that was not going to last for that much longer. So anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, a little bit better at least, and we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Hal Rose, who puts in a $36 donation, and thank you very much, Hal, as well, for that $36 support. And it's 36 instead of 33. We see threw in an extra 3. And Hal said, Enforcer Matt, with all this swapping going on, how about Ukraine getting some by awarding Rostov-on-Don and the east coast of the Sea of Azov to patrol? And pick a question, please.
You know, um, that would be an interesting proposition. Maybe we could approach that with him, Hal Rose. I think that'd be interesting, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
So this one goes to O-Tubes, who said, I heard that Russia are now dropping landmines and tank mines from the sky, and have you heard about that?
Reread that one again.
They said they heard that Russia's now dropping landmines and tank mines from the sky, and have you heard about it? If it's true, that means that that means that they've caught up to Ukraine, because Ukraine's been doing that for some time, actually.
The Russians have had that for a while, actually. They've had it for about a year. It's not as prolific as the Baba Yaga, but technically they are able to drop landmine-sized munitions onto Ukrainian forces and have been for a while. So I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the support and sponsoring our live chat, Hal Rose, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
That was a long gulp there. I thought that was like an indefinite pause, like an indefinite ceasefire. But our next one here goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you, Margaret, as well, for that support and being a channel legend as well. And Margaret said, for the moving fund, and please pick a live chat question.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting the moving fund. We always have to have help moving. It's going to be a long trip from here in Birmingham to Salt Lake City in Utah. Y'all know how long that is by car? That's like 26 hours. Whew, that's a lot of driving. To get to Salt Lake City, that's a load. So it will be one hell of a journey, that's for sure. So looking forward to it in a way, actually. It's going to be quite interesting. The one thing I'm not looking forward to, though, is driving through everything past Columbia, Missouri, because from there to Denver, it gets extremely flat for, hell, how long? Like, it's like 500-something miles, I believe. No, 700 miles nearly. Everything from there on is perfectly flat almost. Like, look at this. Like, I'll show you this on the interstate. This is what it looks like out here. Look at that.
Great heavens.
Perfectly flat for 700 miles. That is quite a distance. That's pretty much an entire 12-hour driving day for the large part, and it's perfectly flat. It's insane, honestly. But it is pretty neat, though, to see how flat it is out there. But also another thing that's more crazily interesting than that, while Kansas looks perfectly flat to the eye, it actually has, I think, something like a 3,000-foot elevation that happens from the east to the west side of the state.
Interesting.
Yeah, so a little bit interesting. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the live chat. So what do we got for a live chat, Matthew, in honor of Margaret Hemsley?
And this one goes to Sheffield, who said, have you thought about the fact that America will get the minerals far cheaper from Russia than Ukraine?
Well, I don't think we would really need to have or want to have any substantive trade with the Russians. They're still a major strategic threat. So while that, honestly, I would think you'd get it cheaper from the Ukrainians, honestly, because we have a strategic partnership with them that guaranteed that we would get it cheaper. So there's really no way the Russians could even give it to us cheaper if they wanted to, because that was the whole thing of the mineral deals, that we pretty much would be able to extract it, no additional cost involved. So I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, and he throws in another $50 support, and thank you very much, Hokey, for the third $50 super chat of the night. He said, did you kids convert to Mormon? And no, we have not, and I have no plans to either. No disrespect to him or anything like that, but I'm good. I am good how I am. But Enforcer, what say you?
No, I haven't converted to being a Mormon. We are just a normal type of Protestants, you know. I'm fine with it. Honestly. I think I'm good. So I hope that that's addressed the best I can, Hokey Red. No disrespect to the Mormons, nice folks. They're very nice people, but I think I'm okay being what I am right now. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And you know what's even more interesting, folks, is that Salt Lake City, which is the home of the Mormons, they have the Twin Peaks, like not the restaurant, but the place. It's right here. Look, the Twin Peaks. Wow, crazy.
Oh wow!
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that! Wow! Dude, actually, this place is, like, strikingly beautiful, really. And look! Suburbs. Yeah! Let's give it up for suburbs. We love suburbs.
Suburbs, hell.
Suburb hell, and everyone's got to live in it because this is America, and we can't have anything that isn't suburb hell. It violates the zoning laws, damn you! But one thing I will give Salt Lake City credit for is that they have a pretty rad public transit system. Like, look at this, y'all. Look at this. Look. Here it is. Jordan Valley Station. It's a part of the tracks. Look at that. That's crazy. It's a little train station.
That is crazy, isn't it? Look at that.
It's an interurban. It's nuts. I can't believe they actually have this. Look, it's another one. It's Sugar Factory Road Station, a part of the Red Line. And there's the train. You know, that's crazy, folks. Coming from Alabama, where public transportation is looked at as some sort of a deadly sin, this is actually crazy to see that there is public transport in a place like Salt Lake City. You know, all you folks out there who live in places like Dallas or really anywhere but Alabama, you count your lucky stars, because we have nothing in Alabama. Like, I was kidding with Matthew because we had to go to the grocery store the other day. I was like, isn't it stupid that Birmingham's public transport only consists of a bus that runs once every hour or so to the Walmarts? And, like, I don't even know where they go beyond that, but they always are at the Walmarts, and then they just disappear. And I'm
George Bush, is that you talking about the Walmarts?
Man, they were going to the Walmarts, and they were looking on the internet. So, man, fool me once, shame me. I think that we should...
I think Kroger's and Walmarts can coexist peacefully, like fish.
I think man and fish can coexist peacefully, and we need to help them to put food on their families. And I think that we should be encouraging greater relationships between women and their OBYGNs, and then also that one time they tried to walk off stage and they pulled on the door handle and the door didn't open, so he just started yanking on it for a second, and then the shoe was thrown in. Bro, there were so many funny moments from that. But anyways, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right. So with that, we are now moving on. And also people are talking about Salt Lake City too. I don't want to rabbit hole too much on it, but let's see. Some people are saying you're going to miss Publix. I actually don't shop at Publix. It's too expensive. I don't want to overpay for groceries. I won't fool with that whole like buy one, get one thing. So I don't really go there.
Also,
but also, by the way, someone had mentioned here, SLC. Let's see. Some people are saying they live there. They said it has everything. Someone said, why did you choose Salt Lake City? Honestly, because it would seem like a clean city. It's got nice surrounding mountains to it. It's got nice like nature to go to. And it seemed like people were pretty friendly out there. I get the whole Mormon thing, by the way. People say, oh, you're not Mormon. Why are you moving to Salt Lake City? That's a misconception in the modern day because actually, Salt Lake County itself is not heavily Mormon anymore. If you go down to Lehigh or down to the south, it gets Mormon. If you go to the north, not really. Ogden's not really that Mormon. But if you go down to Lehigh in that area, Provo, it's very Mormon. But it's not like, you know, if you go there or something, they're going to ostracize you unless you go down to like Lehigh or something. So it's generally pretty good. It seems like a nice place.
You know, man, I'm looking through all these pictures of this Wenco, which is a store type that exists out there in the American Northwest, and all the pictures are from 2018, and it made me start getting in the feels because I was looking at how cheap everything was back then compared to now. Like, look at this. These were the prices for beef hot links back in the day.
I've always wanted a beef hot link.
Or seafood. Look at this. Crawfish, $4.98 a pound.
Interesting.
Man.
Also, someone said, if you haven't visited, you don't know. I've actually been there. I talked to people that actually live there full time and stuff. Here's the thing. The people in Salt Lake City love it that people believe that Salt Lake County is fully Mormon, and they love it that people think that if you move there as a non-Mormon, you're going to be ostracized because it keeps the city generally pretty much the way it is right now. And the people that live there want to keep it that way because they love it the way it is. They think it's nice, and they don't want to change it. So that stereotype that people put on Salt Lake City, especially the downtown proper, is not true anymore. If you visit there, you'll find that out.
Man, you know something though, man. Like people are always saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." You know what's crazy, man? I was looking through the comments on the stream yesterday. Like, dude, you know that this is going to be absolutely ridiculous. Someone was in the comments section telling me I was wrong, that I had double major scoliosis, and that I didn't have it. Like they knew. Like I have an X-ray picture of my spine. I have double major scoliosis. I'd think I'd know. And then someone's in the comment section telling me that I don't even know what my own medical afflictions are. Like that, I was like, how stupid is this? Like, I forgot who even said that, but that I was like, that's just really dumb. That's like someone saying, I'm a paraplegic. Go, actually, I don't think you are. I think you can walk. It's just that you don't really know that you can. It's like, what the hell are they talking about? It's like, he got double major scoliosis. You got a freaking x-ray of it. It literally is shaped like an S. Like, Matthew's seen it. Like, he could verify it's shaped like an S. My spine is. There's no questionability about it. There's an x-ray of it. So I was like, that's just
Sounded
crazy.
very defensive about that. You got something you want to tell us?
Man, I like, bro, like, people, like, here's the thing, folks. When you sit here and sound unsure of yourself on the channel, then people go, oh, why am I watching? He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then when you sit there and sound sure about yourself, oh, he knows everything. And then when I sit there and say something about my personal life, like my eyes are brown or I have double major scoliosis, then people want to come out like acting like they know everything at that point, and then tell you that you don't even have the kind of medical like inflictions that you have, like you just actually have them. Like, that just blew me away, man, reading this guy's like full essay that he wrote. You clearly don't have it because I've seen you in videos. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I was kind of a shock to everyone that I had it, is that I kind of look normal, like, you know, and then I have double major scoliosis and I have it. It's like that just made no sense to me, man, at all. I was just blown away by the sureness of this person in telling me I don't have double major scoliosis. Like, I could show the x-ray. It's like, what else could I do? But anyways, with that, also, man, you know, something else that was interesting to me is that in the more historical part of the city, I guess that would have been grown out first, they actually have fairly sizable parks like this one. Wow.
Yeah. That is nice right there. I went to, is this Liberty Park?
Yeah, this is Liberty Park.
Oh yeah, I went to that one. I didn't get out, but I went and looked at it. They had those animals in there too. There was like a zoo or something in there as well. Like they had the owls and all that stuff. But when I went there, I was like, you know, I'm not Mormon, but this is the place.
Man, this is really nice looking. What about the other
Man, that went
parks?
over your head, man. Damn, that just went over your head.
No, I heard it. I was just like,
Oh, it was just lame. Oh, I get it.
It wasn't lame. It was just that I was like, you know, you left the joke. I'll let the audience laugh at it. We'll keep it rolling. But man, the parks around here are actually really nice, like insanely nice.
Hell yeah, very nice.
Fuck.
That's what I was telling you. I said they got nice parks, but the catch is though, if you live like farther out from downtown Salt Lake City, it's gonna be like a 40-minute, like, you know, tracks ride to get to it. So you're not gonna be able to go to it every day unless you're living near downtown.
What about this park right here, Willow Pond Park? Well, this one's really nice too, man. Like this one, like this is getting further away. Let's see, what other parks? Like, there's actually
You go check out Daybreak, which is like a huge master plan, like neighborhood community over there. They've got like a big lake over there that you can go walking around and stuff. It's like some massive like neighborhood thing.
the East Lake Park Playground. They've got ducks, mallards particularly. I think the mallards are pretty neat, but let's see. Oh, wow. Dude, this is really nice, man. Damn, they don't have anything like this in Birmingham. Damn, I'm not even kidding. They actually don't. It's kind of a shame, really. But what else do they have around here, like park-wise? This is a golf course. This is a golf course. These are golf courses. How about that's a golf course. This is a park, but that's like a baseball park, so it doesn't really count. Where the hell are the parks down here, man? Like, there's like none.
They've got them. It's just they're not massive. You really can't just see them. I mean, look, all the green spots you're looking at, that's all parks.
This is a skate park / like recreational park. But like, I'm talking about like traditional parks, like the ones that are further up towards downtown. Like these are more so like sports areas, you know, like not just like walking parks. Like, and this is attached to a high school here. So, David Street Park. What does this one look like? Oh, they don't even have pictures. That one's that uneventful. So, what about, dang, man, like these are golf courses. These aren't even parks.
Also, everyone said, someone said, visit the state capitol is pretty dope. I visited everywhere. Like I went and walked around the state capitol at night, which was very cool because you really can't walk around state capitals at night, especially in Alabama, at least in my personal opinion, because it doesn't feel very safe. You feel like you might get robbed or something. So you could walk around there and feel pretty safe walking around and stuff around Utah's state capitol. So pretty cool.
Wow, dude. I found this. This is like near to this golf course. This is an urban fishery. You can come fishing here. I guess they stock the pond from like a municipal stock fund, I suppose. But you can come fishing here, and they have a fishing limit of 2 fish per person. So you can actually take these home with you and cook them if you wanted to.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Oh,
That's pretty cool.
please voluntarily release all largemouth bass. Good fishing depends
Oh,
on
like
these
you
fish.
can't take them after all.
Okay, so you can't take them. Okay, so apparently this is like a catch and release kind of thing, just for the fun of fishing. Well, I mean that's still cool though that they even have that for like the city. You can actually go out there. That's neat. You wouldn't find something like this in Alabama. Like I don't think you would, at least, because I haven't seen anything like this around Birmingham. Because let me like the reason why like parks intrigue me is that, one, they're nice public areas, and public areas should always be a really important thing in urban planning. But also, another thing is that we have none in Alabama. Like growing up, there were like very few. And let me see if I can find like, let's see. This is one of the parks. This is a smaller park that we have. It doesn't actually look like that. It looks something like this, and that's the park. Like, it's not an incredibly bad park. It's just that it's quite small, and it's fairly limited, in terms of what it is. It's nothing grand or complex like the parks you would see out there. This is like a baseball park, like the ones you'd find in Salt Lake. And then we have this one. This is like the premier park of the city, I guess you could call it. It's actually
A railroad park.
yeah,
Yeah, you won't catch me getting out of Railroad Park.
it's like I've been to this park and it's not really that impressive. Like it's actually quite questionable. There's a lot of tweakers that hang out in this park, which makes it dangerous. And so not really a place you would want to be. But that's like the only real park I can think of. Beyond that, there really isn't any other park in Birmingham. So when I see massive, really nice and ornate public parks, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, to think people actually had the forethought to design that into the urban planning. That's so neat. Like, honestly, I think that Central Park is incredibly cool. Never been to it, but I've heard a lot of cool things about it, and it looks so cool every time anyone ever goes there and takes pictures of it. I mean, that is a really cool kind of a place.
Yeah, it does look pretty nice. Now, one thing that I did notice about Salt Lake City that was a negative to it was it appeared to be that if you're driving along the interstate and the wind was blowing really hard, that there was like this dust or something that was flying around, like down toward Draper. Like I was driving down through the interstate near that area, and I noticed there was a lot of dust that was flying around. I'm not sure if it was from like the mine or the quarry or something up there. It seemed like something was flying around. I couldn't tell what it was.
Oh, that's just the arid landscape out there.
Are you sure? Because it seemed like it was like limestone, like colored or something.
Oh yeah, that's just what happens. Like the winds kick up the dust a little bit around there.
Yeah, it was pretty strong too. It was like through one little segment of area, like around the ring, like interstate road or something.
Yeah, that's a fairly normal thing out in this part of the country. Because it's all for the larger part. Let me see if I can show it. Like out here in right around here. Maybe this would be a good place to show it. Most of the land out here is held out by these dry grasses, and if there is no dry grasses, it just picks up the very thin layer of like this whitish, yellowish topsoil. It almost looks like sand, but it's soil, and it just flings it around. So that's what normally happens. It isn't from the mine, because the mine actually has a wind vortices that largely keeps everything inside of it, so it isn't gusting from there. It generally is just from the surrounding landscape.
Interesting. Also, Hooky Redneck said altitude sickness is a thing. I didn't really experience altitude sickness when I was in Salt Lake City, like the city part and all the surrounding suburbs of it. But the moment I drove into Park City to go look at that go take a look at that, I started noticing when I got out of the car and I walked to the top of this mountain that was like near Park City. I was like, huh, that's weird. I'm like slightly out of breath, like a little bit more than normal. I'm like, I'm not that out of shape. And then after a little while, I started feeling slightly lightheaded. I was like, huh, that's weird. I think I am getting altitude sick or something. But it went away once you got off the mountain, like you were fine. But it was like temporarily, like on top of a mountain, you felt it.
And where was that again?
I was outside of Park City. If you look at the road that drives beyond Park City, zoom in a little bit, I'll tell you where it is.
Right here?
That might be it, actually.
Godsman's Pass?
I think that is... No, this isn't it. Go back. It was one of those passes up there. It was one of those lookouts. Zoom in a little bit. Let's see here. I think it was Jupiter Peak, I think.
This one?
I think that might be it. It was something like this, though. Like on the top of the mountain. It was something like this.
Man, look at that. That's crazy right here. But you know something that's crazy is that there's Gobbler's Knob right over here. That's kind of crazy, you know? It's just out there.
Oh man, got to go to the top.
Aw, man, they named that one after me. But anyways, oh, they have an Olympic park here. That's cool. Wow, look at that. It's a real
Oh
Olympics
yeah,
park.
you know, Park City is the home to an Olympics. Like that whole Olympics park thing is what Park City's kind of known for.
Wow, that's really neat, actually. I didn't know that. That's so cool, though. Look, it's a real Olympics park. That is neat. That is really cool, actually.
Man, Park City, like I don't think there was any Mormons in Park City. I think Park City was like a completely different feeling and joint compared to like Salt Lake City. It was totally different.
Bro, they
A
got
lot
all
of
over the
expensive
store,
cars
man.
running around. Yeah, they've got a bunch of like high-end resorts out there too. It's like a skiing resort type village place. I was looking at apartments up here. I was like, surely these apartments have to be crazy expensive, and they are. Like for a 600 square foot apartment, it's like 2,000 or 3,000 a month, which is
Ew.
insane.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I'd have to get lost. Like that's unaffordable, actually. But let's see. Man, that's wild though. Fresh market. They have a fresh market. Wow. They've got pumpkins. Wow. Wow, they've got meat. Wow. That's something we do have fresh markets in Birmingham. That is something that's normal. But, man, this is a crazy place, actually. Really cool. What's this park look like? Is this a public park? Or no?
It could be.
I don't think it is, actually. Actually, I think it might be. I can't tell because there's like no marker on the map for it. But anyways, beyond that, that is really crazy. And look, there's all these houses up here. These are like big mansions. Damn, is this like Jackson Hole, but for this area of Utah? Like, if y'all don't
Oh yeah,
know,
man, they got some billionaire hideouts up there in Park City. Like they definitely do.
like here's Jackson, by the way, Jackson Hole in Wyoming, and they got these little houses here, and they're owned by multimillionaires and billionaires. I actually heard that the Diddy actually had a house around here. Pretty much everyone in Hollywood did, so or does. So that's a little interesting. What is this? $186 now. Wow, it's designed like a Swiss hotel, you know, up near like a place like Arosa or something like that.
Yeah, you know, there's a place in
Wow.
what's it, Jackson Hole, that if you drive up to like the side of a mountain, there's like a huge like door that opens up and it goes to this like billionaires neighborhood up on the top of the mountain. We saw it when we drove through the area one time. It goes up to the top.
Yeah, we did actually. We did. I just wish I remember where that was in the city. But Jackson Hole was a little too like the best way I could describe it was like too yuppified. It didn't feel authentic at all. It was like this very forced kind of like a thing. It felt like that. But it was still interesting. It was neat. But it wasn't really my kind of a cup of tea, you know. But anyways, beyond that, getting back down to Salt Lake City. I mean, this like it's just kind of crazy, folks. You know, it's all how it is with the public transport, the public parks, all that sort of stuff, because it just none of that exists here in Alabama or Birmingham particularly. So that's really shocking to me. And on top of that, they have like loads and loads of all kinds of other cool amenities. Like they have all of these really neat museums. Like look at this, man. They have a military museum here, the Fort Douglas Military Museum. They've got tanks, helicopters, paladins. They've got the Natural History Museum right over here. You know, like world-class kind of a museum, really cool.
I
And
drove past all that stuff up there. I went to go eat there at this restaurant called damn, I've already forgot the name of the restaurant. It's a Mexican restaurant though. It's like a better version of Chipotle. But I can't remember the name of it though. It was up there in this exact spot where you're looking. The University of Utah is up here.
yeah, you know, there's a lot of stuff around here. It's so cool. Like, it's like, that is so neat. And then all of it is accessible by rail, which makes things a lot more efficient and it's incredibly cheap. So, really cool stuff, actually. Anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the next ones. We have so many more super chats to go and so little time. I hate it, though, because we always get in deep into conversation every single night. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Grandma Lucy, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Grandma Lucy, for that support. They said, will Putin be arrested in Alaska? And since Russia has threatened the U.S. with nuclear missiles, is his safe haven in Alaska providing aid and comfort to our enemy?
He would not be arrested in Alaska because he's being brought over on generally a sense of diplomatic goodwill. So nothing is going to happen to him while he's in Alaska, which honestly makes this even more insulting, to be entirely honest with you. But I do thank you for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in the $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. And thank you. And they said Air Force One equals, wait a minute, what does this one mean? Do you see this one?
Let me read this one here. Well, we can't read that one. We can't read
What does it mean? Oh, wait a minute. I just got it. I just understand it now. That's actually a pretty good one, actually.
That's a pretty good one.
Read that off, though.
That's a really good one. I'll say that. I'll say it's a really good one, but we can't read it because it is a political joke. But I will have to say, though, as far as creativity points, I'll have to give you a 10 on that one. That one was actually pretty good. So a huge thanks to you for the support. That does it just that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a super chat from Gunfox. So we got 3 of them from Gunfox, and a huge shout to you for the $20 support each time. And Gunfox said, he has the days in history, by the way. He said, on the night of the 9/10 March 1945, the Japanese capital city, codenamed Operation Meeting House, started. Question from the chat, too. Also, 329 B-29s took part in it, 279 over the city.
Let me see if I can show you a picture. This is what Tokyo looked like after Operation Meeting House.
Oh, damn.
Man, that doesn't look like Tokyo today. Only the concrete structures or the brick structures were left standing. Everything else, which most of the buildings in Japan during that era were made of wood and paper, completely burned. And the fires got so hot, the rivers actually started to boil. So people would try and hop into the water thinking they would find safe refuge there, and they get boiled alive. It was pretty nasty stuff. But beyond that, this is a wild sort of a thing, the firebombing of Japan. The firebombing of Japan killed far more people than the nuclear bombs did. But as far as popular memory goes, the nuclear bombs were worse, which honestly understates how bad the firebombings were. But I hope that does address that the best I can. A huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And also, really quickly, I was wondering, let's see here. Can we find some other pictures? Oh yeah, here's some more pictures here actually showing another area of Tokyo. Once again, only the concrete and brick structures were left standing. And here's a view of Tokyo before and after. So you can once again see entire areas just completely burned to the ground. No buildings left. Let's see here. Actually, we'll want to skip past those. But beyond that, it was an incredibly horrendous thing. But I do thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the question from the chat goes to Joe Guerrero, who said, what are the odds that the defense contractors want an invasion of sorts to happen in the hopes the money is greater than being proactive?
Can you reread that one again really quickly?
Yeah, he said, what are the odds the defense contractors want an invasion of sorts to happen in the hopes the money is greater than being proactive?
They're banking on anything at this point. No matter how it goes, they serve to profit. So either way to them, it won't really matter all too much. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a big thanks to you once again for your first super chat of the night, Gunfox. So with that, we're on to his second one.
And his second one is another $20 support. He said 1929, the German airship Graf Zeppelin begins the first around-the-world flight by airship, departing from Lakehurst, New Jersey. And 1940, the German Aufbau-Ost directive is signed by Wilhelm Keitel. And 1944, U.S. 15th Army Corps enters Le Mans.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say that the Zeppelins were pretty cool looking, actually. I thought they were goated. It's just that they're very inefficient and make no sense, really. But they still looked incredibly cool. I mean, look at this thing. Look at it. Let's see. Hold up. I want to see if we can get another good picture of this thing. Oh, come on. It's gotta be... Oh, here we are. The Graf Zeppelin next to the USS Los Angeles. Because we actually had airships for a time in the Navy, and they were flying aircraft carriers. Can't believe that, folks. We actually had flying aircraft carriers for a time. They failed. Both of them crashed and pretty much killed everyone on board. But they were incredibly cool for their time. And let me see here if I can show y'all one of these in operation. Let's see. Oh, let's see here. Where in the world is, I think it's not the USS Los Angeles that carried the aircraft. It's another one. The Akron class. These, let me show you all this. This was so cool. Where's the picture? Come on. Oh, here we go. So they had these little, like parasite fighters that would be dropped out of the bottom of the airship, and just fly away from it. And the idea was that they would be able to cover large swaths of ground or ocean across the Pacific and pretty much observe and report any kind of enemy naval activity or movements by these airships. So pretty much giant flying recon observation posts that also operated kind of as an aircraft carrier in a sense. Sadly, they were both doomed. They both crashed in bad weather, and most of the crew members died on board. I think on the Akron, everyone died when it went down off the coast of California. But beyond that, they were pretty cool for their time, and fairly similar, at least in design, like all airships were to the Graf Zeppelin. But still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here. Let's see. Hold on here. I got some news coming out. Hold on. I might have some news real quick. Let me make sure here. Let's see. Trying to get some confirmation on this real quick. So here's what I'm hearing right now. This is the rumor through the grapevine. Zelensky may participate in the summit in Alaska next Friday with the U.S. president, according to a senior White House official. Early report 30 minutes ago. Not sure if that's actually going to happen or not, because I have a feeling that Putin is going to object to it, but it sounds like Zelensky might be maybe going to Alaska for that meeting. That could cause the meeting to be called off. Because if Putin's not willing to meet with Zelensky, that could be the one thing that breaks the whole thing apart. But we got to see if it actually turns out to be true. Right now, it's being reported by an unnamed White House official, so we'll have to see. But I'm a little bit doubtful.
I'm doubtful as well, but still interesting. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another 20 from Gunfox, and he said the United States' use of atomic bombs on Japan during World War II was a pivotal moment in history. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which occurred on August 6th and 9th, and 1945-1943 U.S. landings at Sant'Agata in Sicily.
And thank you for the support once again, Gunfox. Now I have to say that the use of the atomic bombs was significant because it brought forward the atomic and nuclear age, but also the landings in Sicily are quite interesting. Pretty neat stuff, actually. And I'm trying to see if I can find the name of that city here. Let's see, Sant'Agata. Where would that be? That would be along the coast down here somewhere. Where would it be? Damn, I can't find this thing. Oh, dang. Oh, you know, it was somewhere around here, at least in this part of Sicily, so somewhat, sort of. And oh, look, Palermo. That's like the cheese, you know, Palermo cheese. You know what I mean? It's named after the city here. But what does the city look like? Oh, look. Man, the Mafia's got some pretty nice upbringings here.
Man, I tell you, they got some nice places here. Excuse me.
Dang, bro, he was choking. Man. Oh, dude, look at that water. Dang. Dude, this place is actually cool. This is really cool looking. You know what? I always dissed kind of on southern Italy because I always heard that northern Italy was nicer. But actually, that's changing my mind. What does Syracuse look like? What does Syracuse look like?
It looks real nice. It looks real nice in Syracuse.
Dang, look at this place. This is actually nuts. Well, everyone took a picture of that one fountain. But even this is crazy looking too. Man, Italy's got it going on. Eventually, we'll have to try and take a trip to Italy. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Gunfox, and sharing all these major events on these days in history. And so with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and we're going to speed up dramatically because we are starting to run behind and we have about 40 or 50 super chats left. So we are going to be speeding up while I grab one more super chat here from the live chat. And this one is going to go to none other than Flash1. He puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Flash, for that support. He said, hello, enforcers. Hello, LSA. I'm confused again. America has said that they will not make a deal with the terrorists. And as always, Enforcer Brothers, great show. And live chat question, please.
I'd have to say that is equally confusing as to us as it is to you at this point. But I do thank you for the support. And we will make sure to get one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to 2 Days Gone, who said, do you think Putin will be more relaxed on U.S. soil?
I don't know. I would have to say the court's out on that one for right now. So, unfortunately, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can. But a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, longtime channel legend as well. And he says, I will listen later and have a great day, everyone. And live chat question, please.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. And we will make sure to hear from you later. But a big thanks to you once again for support. And we will make sure to get a live chat. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Dalton, who said, what are the odds of World War III now? Thank you, and LOC.
I would say that the odds of World War III now are still somewhere around the 30% territory, in my opinion. So, a big thanks to you once again for sponsoring our live chat. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Max Knightman. And Max said, while in Cape Town, RSA recording a metal ban in 2023, I saw an active duty military Hind gunship hovering over downtown. It was cursed at, and locals were not pleased.
Huh, that's pretty wild to hear. And I thank you for the support, Max Knightman, and telling us about that very interesting story involving an Mi-24 Hind. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Numeran. And Numeran said, I love you guys, and I can't wait until 2100 Central Standard Time and learn a lot of history, military, army equipment, and daily events. And thank you for the hard work and what you do for all of us and what's going on in the Philippines.
Thank you for supporting them, Marion. And right now, what's going on in the Philippines is that they're battling the Chinese Coast Guard for control of their coastal waters. And the Philippines have said, because of their deteriorating relationship, that they would most likely get involved or support the Taiwanese if the Chinese attempted to invade them. And the Chinese have largely threatened them with war today as a result of that, or largely saying that that sort of a statement will definitely get them into a war and they'll pay dearly for it. So I hope that does answer the situation that's going on in the Philippines. And I got to say, thank you so much for enjoying our show and supporting it so that way we can keep this thing running on into the present day. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Justin Wallace, who puts in 20. He said, sorry guys, all my money is officially in gold, silver, and brass. This is like we're reading a blueprint for what's next, and keep keeping us informed with solid information.
And I thank you so much for enjoying keeping all of y'all informed with solid information, and that's perfectly fine, I understand. But your support is actually still quite large and helps this channel to keep running, and we are massively appreciative and thankful for it. So a massive thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a 20 from Zyper Sniper 1, and he says, coffee fund for the enforcers, and we should just stop Russia now and no more talks. And we need to show strength because Russia won't war, and we need to see that it's a reality.
And I'd have to thank you for the support, and I'd have to agree. I think that we should put our foot down and stop the Russians through a position of strength instead of a position of weakness. I would certainly agree with that, Zyper Sniper. So a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 20 from Julie Jules. And Julie said, I love the work that you put in for us.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying the work that we put in for all of y'all, Julie Jules. We love to know that we can put in a great deal of work, and a huge thanks to you so much once again for enjoying our channel and helping us to keep this thing running. So a massive thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Made in Canada 182, who puts in a 20. And they said, I've been with the LSA 2 years in October, and maybe because I'm an outsider to American politics, but you guys are fairly neutral and make jokes both ways equally, and refreshing for a change. LSA, and I can't wait for the 500,000 subs party.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting me in Canada. And I gotta say, we try to be as neutral as we can. Well, we are as neutral as we can be. I mean, we criticize and critique and praise both sides equally on the channel throughout its history. Anyone who says otherwise is some sort of a political shill, and they don't like it when we criticize their group. So we're only fair and unbiased if we're only criticizing the left or the right. But I do thank you so much for the support, Made in Canada 182, and helping this channel to keep running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 15 from Rye Guy SR, and he said, y'all rock, and thank you, good sir. He said, this makes it an even dono number. And take one from the chat, LLTLSA, and everyone on two wheels, stay safe out there. I lost a riding buddy the other day. And also my condolences to you, by the way. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that's incredibly unfortunate to hear. I'm quite sorry about that as well. But everyone do stay safe out there on motorcycles. Those things are dangerous if you ride them poorly or recklessly. But we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor, Rye Guy SR. And thank you for the kind words. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And the live chat goes to the Savage Warlock, who says, how do you think Putin views Alaska, seeing as it used to be a Russian colony before the U.S. bought it?
He generally has put out a propaganda claim that that's actually Russia's land, which generally gives us an idea that he thinks that that is lost Russian territory. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for sponsoring the live chat, Rye Guy SR, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
So technically, once a Russian security man steps foot on Alaska, it's Russia's, according to Putin's logic. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Silinx, who puts in a 10, and said, not in my beloved Alaska.
I would have to agree. I don't think that Putin should ever disgrace the state of Alaska with his presence. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Con LSA, who puts in a 10. And Con said, taco. Hold on. Con said, the U.S. administration are offering the complete surrender of all of eastern Ukraine just for a 30-day ceasefire. They've now decided to meet Putin in Alaska, and now they're offering an Alaska surrender? What's going on?
We'll never know. I hope that's not the case. If that's the case, I would say that they're like, Honestly, if the move is to start giving up U.S. states, I would say that that would be grounds for impeachment. Just not getting political there, but if we're going to start being so weak that we would start giving away actual U.S. territory, that's grounds for impeachment. I would say that's honestly grounds to have someone not just impeached, but most likely imprisoned for actions in betrayal of the United States of America, akin to treason. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kai B, who puts in a 10. And he said, I love the channel, and would there be any way to add in any type of global threat level or a scale for the seriousness and volume of the news at the start of the video, and long live the LSA?
And I thank you for the support, Kai B. I don't really know of a way we could actually try and do that. Maybe one day we could, but it would take constant updating because the day-to-day situation changes a great deal. But a big thanks to you for the support. I would look into that, though, and I'll see if we can do that, but I'm not entirely sure. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, once again, who puts in a 10. And unfortunately, I can't read it off, though, as it's a political comment. But thank you very much, Jenna, for that support once again, and also helping to keep the channel running. We also have a 10 from Flash1 once again. And he said, hey, Enforcer, I understand you do a major in history. And how do you think this will be written up in history? And I hope you know what I mean. Lame, pathetic, etc.
It'll be written up exactly as that. It'll be written up as someone who's a little bit too big for their britches, started to make decisions that were incredibly terrible for the future of the country, and started to screw a lot of things over. So it won't really be looked at too well, at least on the foreign policy side of things. It'll be looked at the same as Chamberlain or really anyone else that would be in that category if this keeps going the way it is right now and he doesn't waffle again. So I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And a big shout out to Kathy McGraw for putting in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Kathy, for throwing in that support and helping to keep the channel going as well. We also have another 10 from Max Knightman, who said, producer of metal bands from RSA and Botswana, I can tell you the encroachment of Russia and Chinese interests into the region is not popular.
And I'd have to thank you for the support, Max Nyman. I'd also have to say that the Chinese and the Russians are not really particularly popular anywhere, wherever anyone's had a great deal of dealings with them. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one also goes to Max Knightman once again, who puts in the 10. He said, I strongly believe the soft front lines is Southern Africa, and there is a soft war of ideas, especially with diamonds and other resources, and China and Russia are pushing weight around.
I'd have to definitely agree. Africa has started to form up as a new ideological and economic battlefield between the West and the forces of the Axis. So I'd certainly agree with you on that. That's actually pretty true, based on a lot of metrics and statistics. So big thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Just Some Space Cowboy, and he said, it seems as if the president is testing a new foreign policy philosophy. Speak loudly and don't carry a stick. Some wars are unavoidable, and if a war must be fought, you must prepare accordingly.
I would thank you for the support. I actually have my own term for it. I call it WBS syndrome, or actually WB syndrome. That stands for weak bitch syndrome, and that's a fairly common thing here in this country these days, in my honest opinion, especially when it comes to leadership. But nevertheless, I do thank you for the support, and I would have to say that you have to prepare accordingly. You can't really avoid wars if they're popping up, so you just have to prepare for them and deal with them accordingly. So a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hokey Redneck, who puts in a 10. And Hokey said, the biggest mistake that U.S. foreign policy always makes is assuming that other cultures think like we do, and India does not think like we do, and they will never be a partner to the U.S.
I thank you for the support. Similar thing could be said, however, about the Imperial Japanese at the end of World War II, as well as the Koreans, who had lived under Japanese occupation for about 30 or 40 years, but nevertheless, they have become a fairly significant ally in the modern day and age. Not to say that the same thing would happen to India, where there would be a U.S. military occupation of any kind that would last at all or at any point, but it is to say that shifting alliances can change. And although I do think that the Indians are extremely different than us in practically every aspect, we could find some sort of a valuable short-term strategic partnership with them to counter the Chinese. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Duncan VR, who puts in a 14. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. We do appreciate that. Hey. He said, is Don good? Don. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I need a trip to Alaska, oh, man. But I got no subs anymore. And Hot Dog Man loves Don.
He sure does, doesn't he? But a huge thanks to you for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running and throwing in some Dons. Very, very interesting stuff to hear. So huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Dan Leviton, who puts in a 10. He said, I can't trade Ukrainian land with ceasefire lies, and vote Enforcer 2030.
And Enforcer 2040, actually. I wouldn't be old enough to be elected in 2030. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd agree with you. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Just Some Space Cowboy, and he puts in a 10 and says, buying into the red team versus blue team politics is silly. Understand political horseshoe theory. You have more in common with your fellow countrymen than your politicians want you to believe.
And I'd agree with that entirely, Just Some Space Cowboy. I'm always trying to make that clear on the channel. But some people are too far into the Kool-Aid on both ends to really understand that sort of a thing. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to, and also I want to say this real quick, by the way. I want to differentiate something here because I don't want to be putting something out that I'm not really agreeing with. Me personally, I do feel strongly against the current foreign policy decisions, but I do still have some decorum for the office, though. So me personally, I'm not really endorsing any statements about, calling derogatory names about the office and things like that. I just want to make that perfectly clear for myself. Just wanted to clear that up. But anyways, jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Randy Smith, who puts in a 10. And Randy said, even if India doesn't want to be our friends anymore, please don't come back when you have millions of Chinese citizens coming across your border.
And that's exactly what I tell them as well. And I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I also have to make a clarification because I think there may have been a misunderstanding. I was not calling the President of the United States any sort of a derogatory name. I was generally saying that the leadership of the country in general, through the entirety of the political apparatus, is gripped with a weak spine and a weak resolve. Really, that's been something that we've seen over the past 3.5 years, and that's what the statement was addressing, not anyone in particular as an individual. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Steve Blanchard, who puts in a 10. And Steve said massive casualties that are going to be in the next war.
And I would definitely agree, unless if things change. And hopefully we'll be able to see that people make the right kind of decisions and folks get spines and that the right decisions are made. And so with that, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Cole, who puts in a 10. He said, keep up the good work.
And thank you so much for the support, and we will make sure to keep up the good work. So massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to John Bartley, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, John, as well. He said, we all need to quiet ourselves. And as an American, it is clear that the world is waiting for the U.S. to join the war. And Europe is weak and unwilling to end the conflict.
And I thank you for the support, John Bartley. But the thing is that if the Europeans are too weak to do it, and it's a part of our sphere of influence, it's not really on them, it's more so on us. The British aren't the leader of the sphere, we are. So it's largely on us to find a way to resolve the conflict in a way that benefits us, the Ukrainians, and the Europeans as a whole, generally the entirety of the alliance. So a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jason Carney, who puts in a 10. He said, Enforcer, if you became president, would you appoint Met as the head of the Department of Defense?
Actually, we would probably run on a dual ticket where he's the vice president. But I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Nigel, and he puts in a 10 as well and says, I missed the Badger.
Hey, don't we all? But due to time constraints tonight, because we actually still have about 20-something super chats to go, and also some live chats, we're unfortunately going to have to forgo on Alan the Honey Badger. But I do think, well, actually, it's not. That's Alan the Marmot. Unfortunately, we'll have to pass on showing the Honey Badger because I'd have to go digging to find the Honey Badger, at least for the moment. But a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Steve T, who puts in a 10. And Steve said, why have NATO countries not geared up drone manufacturing for Ukraine and let Ukraine test and improve their drones and drone defense to build a suitable product for war and the industry?
I would say that we're trying, actually, at least to some point from what I know, Steve T. We're trying a little bit, but it is an extremely large thing because I don't really think a lot of people in the West, at least at the moment right now, are understanding how rapidly we have to evolve drone warfare and anti-drone warfare tactics. So a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to JC the Music Man, who puts in a 10. He said, I'm moving from 500 foot to 4,500 foot elevation, and you'll feel out of breath for a few weeks until your body adapts to producing more oxygen capacity. And the Army gave us 30 days before having to take a fitness test.
Dang, that's interesting. I actually didn't know that, JC the Music Man. And I thank you for the support. And hopefully that doesn't happen too badly to us, at least. I think Matthew will finally be getting some of that bottled air that he's looking for. But with that,
Yes, bottled oxygen. I do want to try some of that.
he is. Maybe one day you will. I bet it would be like a breath of fresh air. I get it because it's air and it's fresh. Wow. But anyways, a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 9 from the Gladiator. He said, on a lighter note, have you guys seen the latest South Park episodes? And if so, what was your favorite part? Love the work from New Zealand.
And I haven't really seen the South Park episodes. We really don't get a lot of time to watch TV, to be entirely honest. And also, we're not really too much into the whole sort of political commentary thing that's going on with that. I've seen a little bit of it, but I'm not really into the whole domestic political side of things. And I think a lot of people confuse that. This is more so foreign policy and about business. People want to satirize someone or make fun of them. That's on them. It's a free country and they have freedom of speech and can do it. But at the same time, though, it's not really anything I dabble in all too much. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to B. Woodward, who puts in an 8, and also KPH5225, who puts in a 6, and West of Star Army, who put in a 5 as well. And thank you all three, Woodward, KPH, and West, for that support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. We also have a 5 from Alan Deshane. He said, thank you, Enforcers, for everything you do, and have a coffee on me, and please take a live chat. And LSA, love Ukraine.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Alan Deshane, and we will have a coffee on you, and we will also take one from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Shauna, who said, I was watching a live earlier, and Putin was saying the territories he wants to take over and want to leave Ukraine, and the live was being interpreted, so I wasn't sure if it were true.
Matthew, do you understand what that's asking?
If Shauna is asking whether or not Putin wants to take over Luhansk, Donetsk, and Crimea, that would be true. So far, that's what we've heard that the Russians want to take. So if that was what they were trying to say and it was being interpreted that way, it sounds like that is likely accurate. And that's what we're running off of as well. So yeah, I would say that's true.
Yes, but from what we also understand, they're looking to get the rest of Kherson and Zaporizhia because by their illegal referendum that they conducted, they had a vote in each one of those oblasts, including Kherson and Zaporizhia, and according to their vote, they also wanted to be a part of the Russian Federation, and technically are, according to the Russians. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for sponsoring our live chat, Alan, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Burnaby Alex, who puts in the 5, and he said, calling it now that the U.S. is going to give Alaska back to Russia.
I would hope not. That would be absolutely insane. And also, I don't even think the president would have the authority to do something like that if it came down to it. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from JamZXD, who said, would having Putin come to the U.S. allow us to sneak under the radar to cause some damage? It would be foolish to let Russia rebuild. And thanks, and LSA.
I wouldn't really think that Putin would be wreaking havoc in like Fairbanks, Alaska, or Anchorage too much, or any Russians would. It's a fairly remote region, and there's not really an easy way to get there or out for the most part in most places. That's what I have to answer on that. As far as letting them rebuild, I'd certainly agree. And so a big thanks to you once again for support. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a super chat from Jason Curling. And Jason Curling, I was trying to see here why your super chat is not in the message box here. Hold on a second. Let me go back and look. Might have had a glitch or something. Maybe it didn't pop up. Let me go back and check the entire list. Let's see here. Scrolling back up, looking at it. I'll be honest, I don't think I see it in here at all, actually. So let's see. Is it in here? Hold on. I don't know what's going on with this. Jason, I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. Jason put in a super chat. He said, do you think India will now send military aid to Russia now, and thanks?
I think that the Republic of India will still hold off on giving military aid to the Russian Federation, as they generally do not have a domestic arms industry of their own that's incredibly large, and they're generally importing weapon systems from the Russian Federation instead to be able to keep their military running, so I generally would doubt it. But I do thank you for support. I hope that does address that question incredibly well, Jason Curling, and sorry that we missed that earlier. But a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Wait What, who said Acme products need better instructions.
And I would have to agree. Wait, what? I have to agree for sure. So big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And we got a 5 from Derek Pruce. And Derek said, oh boy, what a dumpster fire politics can be. Big clown face. And take one from the chat. And #1 news anchors and stay classy enforcers, LSA.
And thank you for the support, Derek. And we will try and stay classy, best we can at least. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor as well. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we've taken so many from the chat. So literally my last live chat question, I've gotten this whole spreadsheet. But this one goes to Snowy, who said, what if the West just compensates the losses for India if they buy U.S. or Saudi oil, and even more benefits in certain areas? And what comes around goes around, and what about Quad?
It would be a decent idea, at least in my opinion, and it would generally stop the Russians from profiting any further, and it would cost the United States next to nothing. It's only $9 to $10 billion to do that annually. So I would say that would be a pretty good idea. It's just that there are some other issues that would be run into that I can't get into without it actually becoming political. So I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address the live chat well, Derek. And also, folks, I think because we've run out of live chats, we've actually had so many people sponsoring live chats tonight, we've run out of them. There's just no more of them. I don't even think we're going to have a live chat segment tonight because we wouldn't even have live chats to get to at this point. Everyone sponsored so many of them, we've run out of them. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to $2 Garage, who puts in a 5. And they said, it feels like we're on the eve of World War III, from the economy down to the weak short-term leaders. It's just the U.S. is acting like the UK, Ukraine is China, 1937.
I would have to largely agree with that $2 General. It feels a lot like the start of World War II, and it's absolutely infuriating to see that there is nothing to be done to avoid another situation just like the last one. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Maurice, who puts in a 5, and also Plazoth, who puts in a 2, along with Spherical Gentleman. And we do appreciate that, Maurice, Plazoth, and Mr. Gentleman for that support and helping to keep us running as well. And we also have a 5 from Torsten Locke, or Torsten Hawk, not Locke. They put in a $5 donation. They said, you guys are absolutely right with your assessments. I've been saying that since the Russian troop buildup in 2021, and history repeats itself.
And I'd have to agree with you. And I thank you so much for the support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Elka Sir, who said, I got a new job, and it's my first anniversary since I first became a regular for the LSA, and I plan to bring back the buildups scale, but on a monthly basis.
Hey, and a big shout out to you, Elkasur, and congratulations for getting a new job and also being a 1-year member of the LSA. And so a huge thanks to you once again, and we'll be looking forward to the return of the Bliot scale. So a massive thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Des Vult, who said, will the U.S. allow the EU to buy weapons for Ukraine if they reject the peace deal?
I'm not entirely sure, actually. They most likely wouldn't at that point, because we would be saying that the Ukrainians are not working in the best interest of peace, so I would doubt it, but we'll have to see. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Tyler Harris, who said, hello, enforcers. Still in Hawaii, but I wanted to say I'm still watching you guys, even though 6 hours behind, and long live the LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. A great thing to hear that you're still watching, even all the way from Hawaii. We'd love to know that you're watching all the way from Hawaii, and I got to thank you massively for the support and helping us to keep this thing running. And of course, long live the LSA, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to an enemy within, who puts in a 5. And they said, I appreciate you guys who tried to keep it non-political. At a certain point, you have to face the reality of what's going on.
I thank you for the support. And that is true, although I'm never going to get into domestic politics myself. That's just something I never really care to get into. It's mostly pointless. But as far as foreign policy is concerned, whenever I see something that looks like it's going to end up costing a lot of American lives down the road because of the inaction of today, it gets me pretty heated. It gets me very unhappy because the government's always supposed to be working in the proactive best interest of the citizenry, not in a reactive way and not in a weak way that'll end up possibly getting Americans killed in the future. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And Andrew said, a good leader doesn't seek to divide, but unite their populace and surrounds themselves with people who give the best advice. Politics be damned in LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Andrew Honeycutt. And I'd certainly agree with that. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment, and he said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
Hey! and hit the like button, folks. That is an order from none other than LSA Sergeant Figment. And I've got to say that it's an amazing thing. We've gotten up to almost 4,000 likes, and hopefully we can get up a little bit higher than that. But a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And we have a $2 support from Mark Dixon and a $1 support from Squirrel, and they said LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And that actually was the second to last and the final super chat of the night. And we've actually run out of live chat questions in the meantime. So many people sponsor live chats. We quite literally physically ran out of them. So we don't even have a live chat segment to get into because they were pretty much both knocked out in one fell swoop. And so with that, folks, we have actually reached the end.
We do have the Morse code decoders, though.
Oh, yeah, we do. So let's get to the final Morse code decoding of the night. So who is the lucky last group of people who put in the lucky last Morse code decoding of the night?
And those viewers are Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Royal Fluffiness, and Cush and Copioterix, who said Russia is getting away with appeasement again. This is absolutely insane, and LOTLSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dent on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct, and it's an absolutely wonderful and incredible thing to know that y'all are continuing to get that correct in the Lee Spring Army System Corps time and time again, day after day, week after week, month after month. But with that, folks, it's time for us to round this thing out. But before we do, we actually have one last super chat to cover. So, Matthew, what do we got?
So this one goes to Bungus, and Bungus puts in a 10, and thank you very much for that support, good sir. He said, thank you for being bipartisan with the reporting. You call out the BS regardless of what side it's on, and you're being accurate as you can be with your reporting.
And I thank you for the support, Bungus. And that's what we try to do. We've never really hold any bars on anyone that's been in the government for the large part. If they're making a bad decision, they're making a bad decision. It doesn't really matter what political party they're from. A spade's a spade. That's how we like to call it. So a big thanks to you so much once again for support, Bungus, and helping this channel to keep on running. And also a big shout out to John Owens, who threw in a 5 and said, have you ever been to the city of 5 Flags? Man, the answer to that's no. I've never been to that city. And one day we will have to see about going to it. But a big thanks to you, John Owens, and Bungus for the support.
And also, one more, by the way, we also have a $35 support. I don't know how I'm missing these, to be honest with you, because I'm literally scanning the chat throughout the entire stream, so I don't know what's going on here. But Rye Guy put in a $35 donation, and sorry about missing that. That's the second one I missed tonight, which is very unusual. But thank you very much for that $35 support. And he said, keep up the great work, guys. And hypothetical, what if aliens showed up and wanted to erase all humans? And do you think with the current state of affairs in the world, we as a race could unite and fight as one? And I asked for fun, and LSA.
And we certainly could. Like that's not even being optimistic. We certainly could, because it was a fight for our united survival against an external enemy. We would unite during that period to fight off that enemy, because it would be in our mutual interest to destroy whatever this invading force is. So I would say yes. Even with all of the differences in the fighting that's going on right now, I'm pretty sure that we would unify to deal with that threat. So with that, I hope that does address that well, Rye Guy SR. Sorry that was missed, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run the stream for all of y'all tonight, although the news wasn't really the greatest thing that I'd like to hear. We have reached a peak viewership tonight of 12.5 thousand people, and 120,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. A huge thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And also, if we are able to, we will be making a short war video for all of y'all tomorrow, and Enforcer Matt will be the one doing that if we have enough news to make one. And so with that, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you for joining us once again today. And it was heavy news today, but hopefully tomorrow will be better news indeed. But we were here to cover it nonetheless. And thank you all for joining us once again tonight, and all 117,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. And we shall see you tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream, and midday tomorrow as well for a short war video if there is enough news to cover. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, get some rest, and good night.